All right, so should be going now. Let's just, yeah, we are live as of 7 seconds ago.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. We have a lot to talk about tonight.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I want to monitor this. So I got to watch an ad for insurance. All right. Well, welcome back. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
All right, you sound good. You look terrible, but you sound good.
I think I look good on my ends. You look a little purple.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Before anybody new here just immediately leaves, I don't know. Cheers. I got a tall boy here. Cheers, sir. To 2024, which so far I think we're really close to the end of the world because 2024 has been awful. Everything about this year has just been awful.
Has it?
In my life, it's been like the no good, very bad day. That's been all year. It's just been one thing after another. Anyway.
Okay.
Let's go in order of the thumbnail. So I finally got around to watching both Dunes. I put that off for a while because we were going to cover Dune 2 last year, and then they pushed it, right?
Yeah. It was going to come out earlier, and then part of it because of, I believe it was because of SAG, because SAG was on strike, and part of being on strike, they couldn't go and do the press that they wanted to do for the movie.
Yeah.
They were like, well, let's just hold off on releasing it. So they held it off till March, right? I think it was in March that it came out. So
yeah.
They held off on it, released it in March, and yeah.
Okay. Anybody watching, if you could just give us a thumbs up in the chat if we sound all right. We're changing things up. We're learning how to live without StreamYard because StreamYard wants money for simplicity when really all we need is this, just two talking heads and a logo. So, and Zelda. Anyway, so let's get going then. Dune. Dune is something that Patterson, I immediately hit up Patterson afterwards, and I said, I expected to be just blown out of the water by this movie, and I find myself really kind of being apathetic towards it. Yeah, it looks amazing. Yeah, the normal cop-outs. The cinematography, the production is whatever. This is Dune we're talking about. And I think if you ask me to just put my general feelings in a sentence, I go straight into, why isn't this a TV show? Why is this not Game of Thrones in space? I think the main issue with Dune 1 and 2 is that there is a 1 and 2 and not several seasons, especially when you have 6 books or whatever. If it's a hit after the first season or 2 seasons or, call it series, then you have all these other books that you can adapt. And for some reason, they're still making Dune into a movie / a two-parter. And I think it's way too dense. You just can't. There's a reason why it didn't happen until now. And then now that it's happened, I don't really have this amazing love for it. And I'm sitting there going, am I just old and jaded? Or am I not drawn to this?
My takeaway from it is after watching the second one. I think one of the things was first, I liked, going back to the first one, we're not ranking the first one, but I had to watch, I basically sat up, watched the first one on Max before going to see the second one. And then my first thought was like, oh, this is interesting. It's kind of a weird drop off where it ends, but it's promising where you're like, okay, I want to see what happens in the sequel. And I've never read any of the Dune books. I didn't see the David Lynch film. So I was pretty much clueless as to where it was going to go. Second movie, and then I went and saw it with a couple people. And the second movie, I think we'd all talked about it. I think we were all kind of like, I like the look of the first one more because I think the first one has a little more. There's just more to look at. It was a prettier looking movie because it wasn't all set in the desert. But the other thing was, my first thought was, oh, this is Lawrence of Arabia in space. Like this is what this literally. This movie is almost the book or the story is it's almost Lawrence of Arabia to a T.
And what do you mean by that? Just guy
course,
gets in with a tribe of people?
Yeah, but it's like, but it's like he's kind of, he's basically part of the desert, and then he has to kind of bring these people together so that they can overtake the evil forces, essentially. And that's kind of what happens in Lawrence of Arabia, is that Lawrence goes to Arabia. He's part of the British army, and then he ends up out in the desert and allies with these different Saudi groups, and then they are all kind of bickering, and he's like, no, we need to like band together, and then we can take Aqaba, and we can take all these, we can basically kick ass. And that's kind of what happens in this movie. I will say the one thing I think maybe you and I felt the same thing watching it, is that it's the movie kind of drags in the middle, where you feel like so much of the movie is just him sitting on the worm, going from one part of the planet to the next, being like, okay, I've got to go all down and talk to the crazy Southerners of the planet. And then there's like a whole sequence of that happening. But I think the other part of it is that the movie kind of ends on a weird like thing where Florence Pugh just shows up, and you've got Christopher Walken plays the Emperor, and then that in moment so kind of like it's so quick. It's like, oh yeah, they just fight, they just a knife fight, and then the movie's done. You know, like I don't know. And then
that's the thing.
Into it,
There's way too much. It is way too. Again, everything for me is going to go back to, it's a format issue. This is something where there's a sci-fi miniseries. That's how Patterson introduced me to Dune. Long story short, basically I had a layover on campus. He and I went to IU together. I had a 3-hour layover where going home wasn't worth it, so I just had to sit in one spot and wait for my next class. I hit up Patterson. I said, homie, every week you and I are going to get together and we're going to watch Korean horror movies. He said, say no more, get over here. Once we ran out of Korean horror movies, he said, you got to watch Dune. This is my favorite miniseries. You got to check it out. And what it does, being episodic, even though it's incredibly low budget, it's infinitely better than these movies. Yes, these movies look incredible, but the reason why I feel apathetic towards it is because there's no slowly acclimating you to this vast world, this very in-depth world. The episodes slowly bring you into the world. And without that, you're just thrown in, and it's Bene Gesserit and Leon Galib and the Harkonnen and the Atreides and all this stuff that it's no different than Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is best watched, and you watch the first season and then rewatch the first season before you continue on, because there are so many households, there are so many characters, there's lore galore that you need to go through. And I remember thinking, oh, great, now that Game of Thrones is a hit, and obviously could only be done as a high-budget series, they have to do Dune this way. There's no way that somebody out there won't put 2 and 2 together and go, oh, clearly we need to do Dune just like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. They made 2 movies, and I don't know. You can tell me. Maybe they're making more. Maybe they're planning more.
The plan is that they wanted to do Dune Messiah. Now that's when the talk is, because that's the next book in the series. Okay. From all I know about Dune from leading up to this, and you probably know more because you've seen the series. I don't know if you've read the books, but from what I've read and looked at, is that the author of Dune basically wrote it as kind of an anti-Messiah story, which is interesting because so much pop culture action stories usually talk about the one, we talk about like the Matrix or even like Star Wars. There's always like this character that's the Messiah that's going to change everything. And his philosophy and take on it was like the anti-Messiah, not the Antichrist, but essentially like how this idea of Messiah figures are not good for society.
Be careful who you put
your
your faith into. That's the message,
right?
Because
and I think
Paul
here's
is
the thing: when
Paul
you
isn't
talk
clear
about
cut
this
either
movie,
way. Paul isn't
right.
like
and
all
when you
good
talk
or all
about
bad.
This movie, when you talk about this movie in particular, I think that movie actually does a pretty good job of capturing that feeling, because you want to root for Paul. But as you're going through the movie, you realize like Paul is kind of an asshole. Like he's not.
Yeah.
There's something about him that's like you think he's doing. He's like I think they have him and his mom have that discussion where she's like, no, you need to do this because we need to be able to take over these people. So you should play into this Messiah thing that people keep saying that you're the Messiah. And he's like, okay. So by the end of the movie, it is kind of heartbreaking when Zendaya has to leave and is like, like what are you doing? Like you're pretending like you're this crazy Messiah figure when we both know that's not who you are. And then he kind of has to play that up just so that he can get essentially what he wants. Like, and I guess that is so that his house can flourish. Trust me, it's been a while, so I haven't since I've seen the movie. I saw this back in March when it came out. But I'm kind of going off of what I remember of it essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought at least I know but then again, I'm saying like I think you have the what's the word I'm looking for? You have the bias of being like, I saw the TV series or I read the book. I know what this really is. This could be better. And for me, who just saw the two movies, I was like, movies are pretty good, but I wasn't blown away, and I didn't necessarily.
But that's me.
Was like
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that I just come out of it like, why do I not love this?
Like, I'm on the hinge of like, I don't get why like people were like, oh man, it was so great. I'm like, it's good. It's good. It's well produced. It is well directed. It's well acted.
100%.
The story is good, but it's just it doesn't. There is a part of me that was like wondering, like, should they have cut this movie down? Should they have made it shorter to cut some of the crazy parts out of it so that it was a little more coherent, maybe at times? Because there is some times where you feel like you're trying to keep up with the lore at times, and I'm like, okay, wait. So she's the Bene Jesuits, and they have this mind. There's the spice, and there's this blue stuff, and then there's the worms, and then wait, who are the factions, and like the Harkonnen, and who are they versus the House Atreides, and like you kind of have to keep up with all this stuff as you're watching. So I could see why you're like, oh, this should have been a TV show, just because of how dense the lore is.
Can you imagine if Game of Thrones was 2 movies? It'd be terrible.
No,
It'd be absolutely terrible.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They couldn't do that in 2 movies. I think it's funny we're mentioning this because you didn't see this movie, but I do want to kind of briefly talk about this, was that Horizon, which was Kevin Costner's new film that came out, it was just a part 1. But like, if anybody had saw that movie, they would have been like, wait, this is, they would be confused if you're going in with the expectation of being like, oh, this is a movie. And I feel like it's strange that Hollywood is now reverting to like, we're past this kind of like television era where like people kind of started leaving the movies, going to TV for the hard hitting drama stuff. And now movies are trying to do the same thing, but it doesn't really work because the format for film is like it's a sit down 90-minute, 100-minute, or 2-hour, or maybe a 3-hour experience that you have, and that's the end of the story. But now it's like, well, we want to bring it in to be like, you're going to watch a whole TV show. And like when I saw Horizons, it was, I mean, people have said, oh no, this should be a long movie. And I'm like, this would have worked better as a TV show. You could have put this on an HBO Max or Showtime or whatever. Each episode would have been like, what, 30 minutes to an hour? You have 3 hours for that first episode, and
was it produced that way?
Are incoherent. They've made part 1 and part 2. Then they were going to do part 3 and part 4.
But was it supposed to be a TV show that they just recut?
No, they just, Kevin Costner was like, no, I'm going to make this into a movie.
Okay,
which is so weird.
So real quick, this book, highly recommended. Affiliate link in the description. This book, though, is incredibly dense. Real quick, though, I've always
and that's just the first book, because there's more to the series.
There's 6. this is just the coolest thing ever. Like this whole design of just a series of U's in every direction is just absolute genius. But anyway, read it, and I'm never the one to say the book was better, because the book's always better. It's a waste of your breath and everybody's time to say that the book was better.
Your imagination.
My point isn't that the book is better. My point is that, let me just throw out a quick nitpick of two-parters in general, because they always do this and I do not understand why. Why is it called Dune and then the second one is called Dune Part 2? Why not Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2? They do this with everything. It and then It Chapter 2. Even the Mission Impossible just did, or maybe they said Part 1. Maybe they actually had the gonads to say Part 1.
Mission Impossible. No, but it was funny about the Mission Impossible one is that they released the movie. It was Part 1. Because I remember when we did it last year, we were typing up and you had to like type the long ass title. It had one of the longest titles.
Yeah, it did.
Because it was Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning, Part 1. They recently had gone back and decided, hey, we're going to re-release the film as just Dead Reckoning. We're not going to call it Part 1, Part 2. Yeah. And so now they're whatever the Part 2 is going to be, it's going to have a different title, which I think is hilarious that they decided to go back on that. They were like, instead, we're not going to call it that. We're going to call it this.
But remember, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, I think they did Part 1 and Part 2. They titled it.
But I think part of the problem is that I think Hollywood is getting like, I don't know. There's just something about the idea that you're going to do Part 1s and Part 2s because they're like, oh, the story's too long, so we got to do it as a Part 1 and Part 2 type deal. And it's like, I don't know if people couldn't figure out the formula of Empire Strikes Back, because for some reason, when Lucas and Kasdan did Empire Strikes Back, they're able to tell like a compelling Part 2 story, even Back to the Future Part 2. But that one, at least, it was like Part 2. They were able to tell like a filling Part 2 story that ends, but leaves you with like, oh shoot, there's a cliffhanger. And nowadays, it's Hollywood does these like Part 2 movies, but it's like the third act of these Part 1 movies isn't big enough to really like emotionally carry you to be like, wow, that was good. Oh wait, there's going to be another one that's like feels like another story.
Yeah.
At least I thought the Mission Impossible movie did that enough, where I felt like, okay, I could see them being. There is a second one. They kind of set it up so that, okay, I see where this is going to go to this Part 2. But some movies I don't think do that very well. But the Dune Part 1 and Part 2, it's like they just really just cut the story in half. They're like, okay, everything leading up to the tragedy of the fall of House Atreides, great, and then now his like revival is Part 1. I don't know. Maybe it could have been. They could have drawn it out even more and did like Dune in 3 parts, but unfortunately,
but at that
Dune
point, just make a TV
massive.
show. I know it's easy to say in hindsight, but why is anybody turning the most? You either have to cut things out, or you have to completely elongate it into a massive television show. It's such a misstep.
I felt like it was something that they could have. There's stuff in the movie that I felt like they just could have cut. That was the way I felt after watching it.
100%. I mean, there's no. Having seen other versions of it and reading the book doesn't help when. I mean, even something as simple as I must not fear. Fear is a mind killer. You have to kind of take a little time out to emphasize certain things. And when you're just breezing past stuff, you're not connecting with anybody. And so I hit up Patterson right away, and Patterson said, he didn't go, I think he was working, so he didn't go too far into it, but he didn't like the cast of, what's his name, Timothy and Zendaya.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah, and I thought I know nothing about him. I thought he was
dislike them.
I thought he was fine.
Both of them.
Zendaya, I don't really see her as a really talented actress. I just kind of see her as a person. I just see her as a very popular person. I don't really see her as an incredibly gifted actress. I understand why both of them were cast
in like 3 big movies outside of I take that back. I've seen her in like 2 big movies outside of Spider-Man, including this one. So I've seen her in this and Challengers, and I feel like she, maybe it's just the fact that she started as like this kid actor, and now we're kind of seeing the transformation, but maybe it's like my head's going, weren't you just a kid actor like 5 minutes ago, and now you're like playing these more adult roles, and it just doesn't feel like you fulfill those roles. Like that's maybe where my mindset is. I don't think she's bad in the role. I honestly don't. I really didn't.
I don't
like,
think
she
she's
never
bad.
bothers
I
me
just
at all.
What I'm getting at is this: that you have to take adequate time to. I cannot help but bring Lord of the Rings into the discussion because it's
You
so
always bring
easy.
a Lord.
I always bring Lord of the Rings in, but first off, I
Right.
think if you're making a fantasy movie that is incredibly in depth, Peter Jackson led the way. He blazed the trail of you have a 5 or 6 minute prologue. Do not be afraid to copy him. Just straight up copy him and give us a 5 or 6 minute prologue that lays out the houses and the spice and all, and everything nice. Blah, blah, blah. But why is it that I am so in love with all these characters in Lord of the Rings, and watching Dune, I'm not. I'm not in love with anybody, whereas I should be, other than maybe Jason Momoa, because he had a moment of sacrifice, and you can't fail with moments of sacrifice. But hang on.
I'm watching a historic epic. You know what I mean?
But what it is that with Lord of the Rings, you specifically have these moments of levity where, remember Chris Tolkien? Tolkien's son was like, you ruined my dad's book. You turned it into this, it's goofy and action-packed. Yeah, dude, because you have to have a lot. Whereas you have to have a lot of elements coming together. You have to have those moments of levity. You have to have Merry and Pippin goofily stealing fireworks and doing these things so that the audience can have a little fun, but also so we can go, I love these people. I'm having fun with these people. And then stuff gets serious. Like they're running through the woods. They're running through Farmer Maggot's whole, they're stealing his crops. And then the next second, and it's all funny. It's all fun and games. I mean, fun and games. It's literally save the cat. You need to have your fun and games so that we care. And then things get serious, and then it's, oh no, these people I like are in trouble. With Dune, it is just so serious the whole time that I'm just kind of like, what do I care about any of this? I care from reading the book, and I care from watching other formats of the same story. But with this one, I'm looking at incredible visuals, but and again, cop-outs. Cinematography, production design. Oh, how great. But if I don't care, and then so I'm sitting there thinking I'm psychotic, and then fast forward, I'm sitting in the theater watching Trap, an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and I'm going, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying an M. Night movie more than Dune. This shouldn't be the case. But I think that's what it is that it's so, like, even take someone like Baron von Harkonnen or whatever, and he has like 5
You just want some
lines of dialogue
in the story,
a little levity,
that's really
but also
what you needed.
dude,
just a little bit of levity, just a little bit of character, just something other than just like people talking in rooms being overly serious, overly dramatic.
But even if you're gonna be serious, then there still could be moments to draw us into these people. But there is. I mean, I could go on as usual for 10 hours about this movie specifically, but I will always come right back to. Sorry, I keep keeping an eye on the stream because it's not working right. So give me a second. I keep coming back to the same thing, which is this is just such a clear HBO, Apple TV Plus miniseries, and why is it a movie? Why is it 2 movies and not a season of television where you're slowly brought into this world, and then you would care about these people from spending time with them? But I like Jason Momoa. He's got his moment of sacrifice. And then I like Stilgar, which is Javier Bardem's character, because he's like the Morpheus. He's the dogmatic guy. He's the very faithful guy, and I usually kind of respect that in a character because he never despairs. He's always just reliable to be supportive and everything. So he's cool. But pretty much everybody else, they end up just kind of falling flat. It's just kind of unfortunate that this incredible story finally gets done right. and I just end up being kind of apathetic towards it. And it's not because I've read the book. It has nothing to do with me being like, oh, but they did it better other times. It's just that they're breezing through
because
it.
you've seen.
No,
but I
no,
think
no, no.
You've seen the
it's because
show.
they're.
I
It's
think
because
you've seen the show. No. You've seen the show, so you know a little bit about like, oh, I know these characters from the show at least, and I know how this could be better because it was a show at least, and you've seen the miniseries, so things could be stretched out, and you're like, yeah, like in the show, there was probably more moments where you got cooked on the characters, so you're kind of wishing you had that with this movie. Which I get. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not complaining about that. I'm just like, I get that. I get to going into something and be like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this version of it and being like really into it. And then you see like a truncated version, a version that's like much shorter and condensed, and it's like it's not the same experience.
And that is true.
I mean, I get that.
That's certainly true. But also, I mean, for you, did you know anything going into watching these for the first time?
I mean, I watched the first, again, like I said, I saw the first one. I think I vaguely long time ago saw the Nostalgia Critics review of the David Lynch film. So that's really like my first jumping off point into the Dune universe. And maybe I read a little bit about like kind of understanding a little bit about it, but like I will say, like, as far as movies go, it is a giant step forward or a giant step up from the David Lynch film, and not just because of the cinematography and the sound, everything else, basically visually.
Modern
but I think
filmmaking.
It's also not just the modern filmmaking, but I think it's also in storytelling, because I think the jumping in point for the Dune movie is better in the Denis Villeneuve, like as far as you getting into the story, I think it does a better job. Whereas the Dune David Lynch film does the prologue thing like you're talking about, but it doesn't do it in a very satisfying way that just feels like someone's telling you the story versus you like experiencing it like you do in the Lord of the Rings prologue. So I had a little bit, but again, my feelings was it was an okay movie. I didn't think it was the best movie of the year at that point. I was like, at that point, I thought it was the best movie of the year, but I was like it wasn't Oppenheimer. That was my feeling. It was like, it was good, but it wasn't like amazing,
And that's what I'm getting at.
That was my feeling.
That was my feeling. I definitely have a bias from being a fan of two other formats of it. Two other medium iterations. That's true. But emotionally, just having a reaction, a genuine reaction to the movie, I share your reaction, which is, who I don't care about this. So I start questioning my life. I start sitting there being like, am I just old and jaded, or is this not that great? And that's why I ran to Patterson, like, hey, Patterson, help me out. Like, help me out here, dude, because should I care about this? And he basically, he's like, no, I don't really care either. I'm like, okay, good. Then it's not just me, because that's the thing is I don't, somebody could say, I think I messaged you and I was like, all I could think about was this versus Lord of the Rings, where some jerk off could walk in and be like, "Well, you watched that as a kid, so you're connected to it because you watch as kid." And I think no, there are plenty of things that I watched as a kid that I don't connect with anymore, or that I don't watch in general. Why is it that something like Lord of the Rings still sticks with me? And all you have to do is go watch Lord of the Rings, and what are the moments where you're genuinely drawn into a character, and then what are those equivalents in something like Dune? And again, I point to Momoa having a moment of sacrifice. And, I mean, even Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin is so awesome, but I don't know, where was a moment where he shined, or where did the romance between Muad'Dib
I
and
think Dune.
Zendaya happen.
I think Dune's problem is that, and I don't know if this is because I didn't read the books and I didn't see the other series, but I don't know if Dune's characters have personality outside of having to be uber serious most of the time.
Yeah.
They have wants and needs. Like you understand that pretty quickly, and that's what I think is at least. It's like on paper, everything seems like pretty good, but like the X factor, the thing that I think wants to draw you into those characters, there's not much for you to like about them. There's not like I'm thinking of when you say Lord of the Rings and you're talking in those terms, I think of like I love the reaction. I love Gimli as a character. He's such a nice, he's a serious character, but like there's something about his levity that he adds to every scene. Merry and Pippin, they add a hint of levity to most of the scenes, but because of that levity, because they aren't the uber serious characters with their juxtaposition with all these characters that have a lot more on their plate and a lot more at stake for themselves.
And they thoroughly characterize their race. Gimli is very much a dwarf. The hobbits are very much hobbits. With this, like, you have
there's not nobody
the psychopathic hearkening guy. Like, let me just cut people's throats to show that I have no recollection of that in
it's kind of like
anything
a
else.
one-note villain.
It's what it ends up being is I kind of go because it's like let me do something evil just to show that I'm a psychopath, and it just ends up feeling a little.
It's a
forced.
One note. It's a little,
it's
a little one note.
You might as well pick up a puppy and just cut the puppy's head off, and it's like, okay, I get it, he's bad.
I think, what you're describing to me though is that there's no, the characters don't have enough. There's not enough juice. There's nothing. But I also wonder, and again, you've read the books, but I also do wonder, like, is that by design? Is it where the good thing about Tolkien's books was that there was. Even if Chris Tolkien's complaining about them destroying what Tolkien envisioned for whatever, there was room there where like these characters wanted comfort. Like he even wrote that very early on in the books where they talk about, I think in the very first chapter, or even before the first chapter, talking about how hobbits want to be comfortable. They don't want to go outside. They're not crazy about all these things. So that adds a lot of great conflict, but it's also, you kind of care for this character because he's just like this wholesome guy that has to go out. It's like taking the most wholesome person you can think of and saying, hey, you have to go to a war zone that's the idea that I spring up in my head is like you gotta
leave
this
paradise
guy, like reading books. He loves sitting inside reading books, being like smoking his pipe, maybe taking a couple drinks, maybe going to the bar, but like he doesn't do anything too crazy. He's very very home, like a homebody. Now this homebody is told, hey, you need to go out and I need you to go send you out into the worst war zone, past the worst war zone to stop to fight in a war. Like that's great conflict.
But we also understand right away, we know the stakes. We know right away, the Shire is awesome, and if they don't do this, the Shire will be destroyed.
I wouldn't say the Shire's awesome. The Shire is just a homely.
The Shire's not awesome.
I wouldn't say the Shire's awesome.
The Shire is paradise, and so it's established.
Awesome.
It's established right away.
The Shire like it's Las Vegas.
It's established right away that if they
it's like
fail,
a small town in Indiana,
there won't be a Shire, Pippin.
This is home.
There won't.
Home.
Are you just waiting for me to open my mouth so you can speak?
No. I think it's the go ahead.
There won't be a Shire, Pippin. That's the whole thing, is if we fail, this evil will spread. So right away, because the movie starts in the Shire, those are the stakes. Oh, we have to save this beautiful homeland of ours by going off into the war zone you're talking about. Here, you have your fun revenge scheme with Paul. That's what anchors the whole thing, and
it's more in tune with something like Hamlet, where it's like there's not this juxtaposition of like homebody has to go to a war zone. It's what you would expect has to go to war zone goes to war. Like that's not as exciting, I guess. Like it's more exciting and more adventuresome to say the everyman has to go to the war zone versus that has been trained his whole life to be a prince essentially, and is kind of been trained and is told, hey, you're gonna have to fight for us one day, and like maybe not that's what he says in the story, but like essentially like you have these duties that you're going to have to fulfill at some point in your life, and we're training you now so that when you're older, you're going to have to do. And so he's endued with all of these responsibilities, as well as like just essentially royal duties, essentially, or like basically trained and brought up to be kind of like you mentioned Game of Thrones, kind of like how Jon Snow in the very early seasons, they're like, oh no, he's like, why am I going to be a squire? Like, I don't want to be a squire. Or a steward. I don't want to be a steward. And they kind of say like, no. You're being a steward because we're going to set you up as for command. Like, you're going to be already set up for that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's with Paul, is like, but when you jump into the story, you already know, like, he's already kind of there, outside of also his mom knows Jedi mind tricks. And like, now he's finding this stuff out as well. But when he gets to the desert, it's like, that's where like it becomes Lawrence of Arabia, because he's like this trained military guy who's going in with these basically, looking for a better term, savages, to be like, oh yeah, you're going to take over, you're going to have to like train all these guys to basically take on the big bads. And which is great. But like, that stuff's fun and exciting, but like there's no fun and game, like you're saying. There was no fun to it. There's nothing. It's very taken very seriously. There's too much earnestness, like I wish. Yeah, if this movie maybe had like one or two fun characters, but we don't get that. Like, we get the Misa Akalib guy, Javier Bardem's character, who's basically like he's like, he believes in him so much that it's almost a joke, but like that became a meme because it was almost like, oh, he does this, oh, Misa Akalib. Like,
but I like that. Patterson filled me in on it being a meme. I enjoy that because I do think that. Yes, Herbert's whole thing was be careful who you put your faith in, because there is such a thing as a false messiah. And yeah, maybe Paul isn't an angel, right? But he still is capable of doing these amazing things. He pulls off several miracles. They go there ahead of time. The Bene Gesserit goes in ahead of time. They plant this false, these prophecies and this false religion. But then it's not like Paul is a total shyster. He drinks the water of life and he survives. He rides the sandworm and survives, and he rides absolutely the biggest one on the planet probably. He pulls off these amazing miracles, and then you have Zendaya yelling about, this is how they keep us under control because of you believe in this Messiah. Meanwhile, he's doing messianic things, But to your point, though, that's what I'm saying is that's what I appreciate about it. I actually like those elements, but then it's because it's a movie and not a TV show. It's so damn rushed. Just A to B to C to D. Just it's so quick.
Yeah.
And there's no real fun to it, and that's why I don't connect with anybody. It's even just like, hey, whatever, Paul's dad is being killed, and I'm just like, I don't know, we just met him like a scene ago. And I'm kind of combining both movies tonight. I'm talking about all of Dune. I know we're just ranking the second one. Right. The first one, again, it's being a formatting thing. It's frustrating because it's like the first movie happens, and the second one starts with him. He's already joined up with the tribe, and he has to kind of prove himself in the beginning. I mean, at the end of the first one, he proved himself, but it's like he's got to ride the worm, and then from there, it's just all I can remember. And I watched it 1.5 times. I watched it, and then I watched the second half again, and to kind of confirm my feelings on this, which was, it's just so plot, because it has to be, because this thing is so damn dense that it's just, how do you compress this into 5 or 6 hours? It just ends up being plot with no time to stop and, let these two people fall in love or truly understand anything that's going on, or even sit with the Harkonnens for a while and understand their take on this, because these houses have been feuding for thousands of years, but it just ends up being just I'm thinking I'm
I mean,
editing No Time to Die right now, and my main beef with No Time to Die was it's move on the movie. It's just keep going,
sure.
don't stop
I
for any
never
time
got.
for a second movie.
I wouldn't say that I felt that, but I did feel more like what was the point of like there was just some sequences where I was like, why do we need so much like traveling from sandworm to sandworm? Like we get it. Like I there was stuff like that but I do think like the way in which the movie ends feels like it should be bigger, and it just doesn't feel that big to me. And I think that was to me where I was like,
Yeah, it's like
it's
Walken
fine.
comes
Like,
in. Walken's like, "Hey, I'm the Emperor." Paul's like, I'm gonna kill you unless I fight this Harkonnen guy, and then I kill that guy, and then I'm gonna marry your daughter, and I'm just,
I
I'm
see
just
the
like, we're just
tragedy
going
in
through the
that,
motions. We're just going through the
Sure.
motions. Ugh.
And it's like there's not, yeah, because I see the tragedy in it where it's like he's like so inflamed. Like this is me giving the movie some credit, because I don't think this is like a bottom tier movie if we were doing the whole list, right? But I think
Well, it's number. I
if we were
just
doing
added
every
it to the
movie-
list. It's officially.
Oh my God,
number
it's
one
on the
movie
list.
of the
Holy
year.
shit.
Yeah.
Number one in the movie of the
Yeah.
year so far.
Yep.
I would say the thing that the tragedy aspect of it that I did, like I was like, okay, I can buy that, is like the fact that Zendaya is supposed to like be his love interest and everything, and like they obviously they have something there, and he is so like taken aback and so into this Messiah thing, like he's just like, I can't give this up. Like this is the thing that I have to do now because I'm on my revenge thing for the Atreides and everything else. That he's like, I gotta give up. Essentially being like, I'm gonna marry this other girl, and she's like, what the fuck? She leaves, and that like I thought that was tragic. Like I was like, that's like a kind of a nice little tragic way to like end the movie, but it is weird when you watch it and you're like, wait, are there supposed to be more of these or not? Like I'm a little confused. So I am curious if they do maybe they do part 3 and 4, and that's Dune Messiah, or they call it Dune Messiah. I don't know what they're gonna do. They do that, I'm curious where that's gonna go from there. So I liked the movie, but it wasn't like I didn't like. I'm not going home being like, oh, I love this movie. This movie's great. I'm not like telling people like, oh, you need to see this like now. I'd be like, it's not for everybody, because admittedly it's not. It's a sci-fi epic it's a Lawrence of Arabia in space, and Lawrence of Arabia I think is not for everybody. So
here's a quick lesson in me being consistent, where I don't care about cinematography and special effects. Those things are great, but if you don't hit me with story and meaning, I don't give a damn. I really, as I've said before, you can take a really well lit photograph of a pile of shit, and I'm like, that's still a pile of shit. The very low budget sci-fi channel original miniseries for Dune looks like ass. It's like Star Trek.
Does it smell
it's like
ass?
Star Trek original series level production quality. But even on that front, you and I both, we love original Star Trek.
I love Star Trek.
I don't care if it looks dated. The stories are phenomenal. The characters you just want to be around and hang out with. Same thing here. I don't care about all the big modern filmmaking bells and whistles when the emphasis isn't on the story. I think even, didn't you tell me that Denis, or maybe I just heard this through the grapevine, he doesn't like dialogue. He likes visuals, which is great. He's a very visual storyteller. But even just having Stellan Skarsgård, this amazing actor playing the Baron, is just a fat guy sitting in a tub of black, oil or whatever, and not speaking, whereas hardly saying anything at all, even though he's an incredible villain. And then go to the Sci-Fi Channel one, and he's the very flamboyant, he's one of those awesome fat actors. He's just very flamboyant. I don't know his name.
Are you talking about Skarsgård?
No. The guy in the sci-fi miniseries is I don't know his name,
I
but
don't
he's
know.
awesome.
I don't know.
And you spend a lot of time with him. That's the way it should be. But here you spend very little time with people, and there's just too much. You cannot make Dune into a movie. Stop trying. Just HBO, step up and do it. Apple TV, step up and do it. Because this is just a waste of our time. Oh, but the cinematography. Anyway, number 1 movie of the year is Dune Part 2. I don't think you can even see this, right? Can you even see that? You can't even.
I'm looking at YouTube. I can't see it on our OBS, but I can see it on the.
I'll leave it up for a
YouTube
minute.
stuff.
Anybody watching, please help us out. I don't know why. Every time I look at my phone, you and I are freezing. So,
I don't know.
so far we are completely screwing the pooch, but the audio is probably good. So
That's
there's
the
that.
important part.
I'm
supposed to
gonna
be the important
turn down I'm gonna cut the video bit rate in half and hope for the best. Okay, so
Okay.
would you like to move on to Inside Out 2?
Yeah, man, we should talk about that movie.
I'm just
A
gonna
movie that I saw with my kids that I really liked.
I'm just gonna
They really
put
liked
it
it.
right
I
at the
also
top
really
of the
liked it, too.
list. I'm not even gonna ask you your
I
opinion.
will not even argue with you. I won't even argue with you because I'm on the same page. I went and saw Inside Out 2.
Out
It moved me,
2.
it hits you right in the feels. It's like, oh wait, that's exactly how I felt growing up. That's how I still feel to this day. There's too many things I haven't seen it in a while, but again, it was just a good movie overall. Fantastic movie. I would recommend it to anybody.
I'm going to take it a step
Like, I
further.
don't-
I think that walking out
unless
of
you're
Inside Out 2.
jog my memory, because like I think the crazy thing is, I guess the one thing I would like to kind of talk about is that in today, a lot of my friends and a lot of people I know talk about having really bad anxiety, and that being like kind of an all across the board thing.
I
For
love
people. And I think it's
when
kind of-
people talk about their anxiety to me. I'm immediately
But-
engaged. I stop what I'm doing and I turn to them and I say, "What? You have
gay.
anxiety? You're so special. Oh my God, you have what
What I'm
anxiety?"
getting at, though- all right, smartass. What I'm getting at though is just the fact that like a lot of people talk about it as an issue, and there are and sometimes I'm like, what are you talking? Like, are you just overly anxious? But I do kind of see where they're coming from, is that sometimes you get overworked as like overthinking things and thinking things over. And
Yeah,
because
we're all gonna die one day, and we have to wake up and
true, but like when
constantly
you're at a
keep
young
our
age,
bodies
you're
fueled.
constantly thinking about all that stuff, and so it's kind of interesting to see a movie that kind of like takes that idea and like places it in a way that like even if you weren't aware of those things, you're like, oh, okay, I see where anxiety can take control of you. But it's like
But
I
it
will always go
specifically
back to
happens
saying,
at puberty. You are before this is okay. Walking out of this movie, I immediately I saw it with my sister and all her kids, and yeah, the kids are like, "Oh, colorful, oh, fun." They don't know what's going on. What's going on is that Pixar is incredibly good at just taking a concept and just squeezing all the beautiful juice out of it. Everybody just racked every last neuron in their head to make this thing as perfect as possible. So the first one just has the 5 emotions. Help me out. It's joy, sadness, disgust,
anger,
and
disgust, sadness.
No, I said that.
Fear.
Fear?
Joy, fear. So there's joy and sadness, and then there's anger, disgust. So she's in green.
And
anger is played by
fear
Jack Black,
is like
or
the
Jack. Fear is the guy who's like purple, and that's why he was like.
I think it was like
early
Bill
on,
Hader.
He's like, oh, anxiety shows up. He's like, oh, we're gonna be best friends.
And that's
like,
all you
those
have.
two
Yeah,
emotions
totally.
kind of take.
But that's all you. That's literally all you have until puberty comes along, and then with that comes sexuality, and with that comes self-awareness. This is what the Garden of Eden story is about. It's what the forbidden fruit is about. Adam and Eve they're not just eating fruit, they're waking up to reality. And once you wake up to reality, you're like, oh God, everything's trying to kill us. Any kid is just living in the Garden of Eden. They're living in the paradise of innocence, where all they have to worry about is not eating disgusting things, like broccoli sets off the disgust trigger, and they're either happy or they're sad or they're afraid. Anxiety comes in because now it's like, oh, you need to be accepted at school, and you need to look attractive, and you need to, blah, 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 blah. And so I think in my view of Pixar taking these concepts and owning them, I think Inside Out 1 and Inside Out 2 are the absolute greatest Pixar movies. 100%, it's above, in my book, it's above Toy Story, it's above Finding Nemo, it's above absolutely everything because it so beautifully just takes these concepts and owns them completely.
You're wrong.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a Pixar?
Wrong.
Do you have a Pixar favorite above Inside Out 1 and 2?
Well, I mean, like it's thing. It's like you're talking about like the concepts as like your favorite Pixar movie. That's a good question though. I would say like for me, and maybe this is like a weird nostalgia. When I say nostalgia, I mean it's like it's not nostalgia for me as a child. It's nostalgia for me as like when I was in high school. No, like I like Toy Story, but I think my favorite two that stick out are Up and Wall-E, because I think that was when Pixar kind of proved that they can do stuff that's like, yeah, we're telling stories that are for kids, but like they're gonna hit home with adults more than. And I think they did this before Toy Story 3 came out. Toy Story 3 I think was special because it was literally like the first nostalgia movie that really hit home with people, because it was a movie that was made like years after the first two when everyone was a kid, and then the 3 had come out, and it was more of like that was a nostalgia bump. Like that movie was more nostalgia. But I think for me at least my favorite two were Wall-E or Up, like for sure. Probably like those the most.
Yeah.
But
and I think
those
those are
what
fantastic.
what you're talking about as far as like entering the mind and talking about emotions and stuff. Yeah, I think that stuff's great too. Like I think these are definitely top tier movies. I like this one a lot in that it does kind of break down something that's a little more, it's like, are you ready, kids? Like you mastered this. Like let's get to adulthood, or let's get into our preteens.
Here come more emotions.
Puberty. Here comes more emotions. Here comes more, a little more deeper dive. And I like the other thing I like about this movie. And there's a trope in Disney movies that have kind of taken hold, is where like the villains aren't really bad guys. I hate it, but in this situation, I think it really works. Where like the villains being the antagonists of the story, like anxiety, embarrassment, all of the other emotions, like it makes sense. And then they all have to like work together, because then they realize like they can't be working against each other. They all have to be working together in tandem. Like that was the purpose. That was their whole purpose to begin with. I do think it's weird though that when you go back and watch the first movie, you're like, wait, where was anxiety and the other other emotions?
They don't exist yet. Little kids don't have anxiety in the same way.
No. When you watch the other movies, go back and watch the other movie, the first movie. The adults, anytime they jump to the adults' emotions, because they show the adults. Yeah. Well, that's all I'm saying. It's like you jump to the adults' emotions, and you'd be like, it's weird because the mom's emotion is sadness, and like that's the one who's kind of like in charge.
They have the 5.
Dad, it's anger.
The parents just have the 5.
They just have the main 5.
Yeah.
And I guess they just, and of course, they didn't come up with this just yet. They came up with it for the sequels. I get that, but like,
and you wouldn't.
It's funny because you would think
it
that
wouldn't make
reality,
sense. You would cut into their heads. Unfortunately, you're right, but unfortunately, maybe they discussed it. Probably not. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt for 5 seconds. If you suddenly jumped into the parents' heads and there were more than the 5, it wouldn't. It would lack explanation. You know?
Right. And then you'd have to explain that, and I get that. I totally I understand that. But like, it is funny to going back and watching the first one and be like, when the mom, like you think about it and you're like, and I know my wife, and I know like a lot of women who are married, and like there's a lot of things on their minds that you have to like plan for. Like the next morning, you're like, I got to get the kids up. We got to go do this. I got to go figure out what's for dinner, all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's an anxiety emotion. Like that's all rooted in anxiety. So you would think that the woman's head person would be anxiety, not necessarily sadness, which is, it's interesting to me. Guys, I could understand anger being the head, especially you, Chuck. Anger being like the head emotion, the guy who's in control. I just think that's funny to me. But that's all.
I mean, that's every guy.
But,
every guy,
every
anger is in the driver's seat most of the time for men.
Right.
So I what I love about the first one, and where the moment that I fell in love with the first one was the moral of the story overall is that sadness isn't just something to be crapped on all the time. Remember, the actress is literally, what's her name from The Office? You know, she's like the Eeyore.
There's a perfect casting.
Exactly.
Perfect casting.
She's the Eeyore of The Office,
yes,
and so she makes
plays
the perfect.
Phyllis on The Office.
She's sadness beautifully. So it's that moment where, affiliate link. my book.
Get out of here.
Go buy my book.
Get out of here.
There's a beauty to understanding that you need, that dichotomies exist for a reason, and that you cannot, anybody out there saying all you need is love is wrong. You don't just need love. You also need hatred. You don't just need light. You need dark too.
I don't know if you need.
Shut up.
Hatred.
You need. Yeah, you do.
Of
course, you need hatred. Somebody breaks into your house and you're gonna love them. No, you're going to kill them if you have a brain in your head. That's the point. Everybody thinks that just love all the time. No, you can overdose on love. You can give your children too much love and then turn them into forever children. There's a reason why love and hate exist, and you need both. You need a balance of these dichotomous things in all of existence. And so to say that everybody should be happy all the time, no, you need sadness. That was the moment I fell in love with the first Inside Out, because it's when Joy says, "Oh, I always just hated you, sadness, because you're the opposite of me, and I think everything should be joyous all the time." No, turns out the hero of the first movie is sadness, because when something happens, we deal with it, we process it by crying. We cry out anytime anything happens. You just cry until you don't have any more tears, and then that's your brain healing. That's your brain rewiring. And that's what you see at the end of Inside Out 1. Inside Out 2 does that whole upping the ante of bringing in more emotions, and then it's like you need anxiety. You need it. And yet, today, they don't go this far, but today people are constantly just pill popping to get rid of anxiety. No, you need anxiety. Your wife needs to be anxious all the time. Why? Because she has kids. She needs to be anxious about the kids. Is that uncomfortable? Yes, but it's a survival tactic. You need to be constantly worried about the livelihood of your children.
In your work, when you bring it, it's not. I mean, I'm only giving that. I was only making that assumption because of the fact that we jump into the other emotions and see, or the other people, and we see who's in charge of their emotions.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, but what I'm getting to at that is like, you need to have anxiety. Basically, the movie's in point is like, you need these emotions to function as a human being. Like they serve a purpose. They're not enemy. They're not.
But when you let anxiety drive everything,
like anything in life,
take
too
it
much
too
of
far.
something is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Too little of something is also not a good thing.
Yes.
So like there's a reason. Everything has a purpose.
Yeah.
As far as your emotions go. And
exactly.
I think it's beautifully said in this movie. And I outside of just bringing the anxiety and emotion stuff, I love that they're telling like this really small story in a big movie. Like it should be like on face value when you look at it without the emotion part of it. You're like, oh wait, this is like a really, really low stakes story. It's about a girl who goes to a hockey camp, who wants to get into a hockey team.
Wants to be accepted by the
she just
team,
wants to be accepted by cooler kids. That's it. There's nothing, and it's all about her. Like it's such a true to life story too, because it's also about dealing with like you dealing with your friends groups, and you're like, I'm really tight with my friends, but to get to that next thing or to get to where I think I need to go, I need to like give up my friends to try to like woo these other people into doing. And I've seen that in other stories. Like I recently watched Dee Dee, and there's a similar little bit in the movie that is exactly that same story. But I love that story. I think it's funny because it's just like, it's such a low stakes. Like if you just took the emotion stuff out of it, make it into an indie film, no one would bat an eye. They'd just be like, oh, okay, like it's just an indie drama. But like when you add the emotionality, as far as like the emotions being characters in the story, it kind of adds another element that I think is really nice. It's like, oh, like we're telling this like low stakes story, but we're also like giving it extra stakes by creating these other characters which are in your head. I am mad that Disney. This is just a tangent, Charlie, but I am mad that Disney hasn't reopened. They had a ride at Epcot years ago that they shut down. I think it was called Commander Cody or something like that. I don't know what it was. It wasn't Commander Cody, but essentially it was about a kid who it's a ride that you go in and you're like inside the kid's mind, and you're like there's this little mind puppet thing inside the mind, and he's talking to every part of the body to make sure that every part of the body is doing what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a learning thing as far as like, oh, how your body works. I don't understand why Disney hasn't like jumped on board and been like, we need to revive this ride, and then just like take the Pixar characters, the Inside Out characters, and like replace them into this ride and just do an upgrade of the same ride mechanism. It's a show, basically. You're just watching a show.
Are you paying attention, Disney? Send McCurdy a check.
They're not going to pay attention. They're not going to pay me a check. Someone has probably thought of this idea. I'm just surprised that they haven't, like, either they are working on it or they haven't like been like, oh yeah, we have the money to do that in this quarterly budget or what. I don't know, but they should. That's a ride I think they should doing, especially after this movie, because I thought it was the first I will also say it's the one animated film I've seen this year that I thought was pretty good, because I saw Kung Fu Panda 4, I saw this, and I saw recently Despicable Me 4. This was the best one out of the bunch.
I wouldn't be surprised if this movie stays
I was so
at the
happy
top of
that
the list
Pixar was
for
back.
a while. Right?
Like this was the best.
A movie like this,
number one on the list.
A movie like this drips in meaning. So, okay, the way they go about the meaning is a whole bunch. This one and the first one have these brilliant visual metaphors for how the mind works. Right? Or what are you just showing that you're out? Go get more. Hey, rookie.
I only have like a little
rookie.
bit
Yeah. Oh yeah. So okay, I have a favorite of these metaphors. Do you have one? Let me share mine first, and then you can show me yours.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. Allow me to illustrate. My favorite is when they find. So real quick context. Basically, the core 5 emotions get booted from the mind. They get thrown into the outer limits of the mind because anxiety has taken over. And anxiety's role is, Riley wants to join this hockey team. So anxiety is hell-bent on that. At all costs, I'm going to get Riley what she wants because she needs to become a person now. Okay, that's the perfect one right there. The perfect metaphor is that all the 5 emotions go to bed one night and everything's normal, and then the puberty alarm goes off and they all freak out, like, what's going on? What's going on? And then all these new emotions come out of nowhere because now you're going through puberty. Now you leave the paradise of childhood and you enter adulthood, where part of that is knowing you're going to die one day. That's not explored in this movie, but that's part of it, is that loss of innocence. So, for the first time ever, she has to consider things like popularity, and should I get rid of my loser friends to get with better friends that will help me climb the social ladder, blah, blah, blah. My favorite visual metaphor for just when they go in the mind and they do really clever things that the adults understand and the kids don't, is that they find the banished emotions, the core 5, they find the imagination. They're like, oh yeah, remember the imagination? This is where we dream up unicorns and stuff. And they go in the imagination, and it's been co-opted by anxiety, where no longer are you an innocent child lounging around with the imagination that's thinking up, pizza televisions or, just absurd things. Now it's been co-opted by anxiety that is doing nothing but doing what your wife does every night. Oh my God, I have to wake up tomorrow and I got to get the kids to school and then I got to make lunch and I got to do what if this happens? What if that happens? What if, oh my God, what if tomorrow I fart in the elevator and everybody's going to laugh at me? That's what the imagination is doing now. It's no longer coming up with fun things. It's just thinking of all the awful things that could happen so that you can avoid it. And that's what the mind does.
You
the
create
mind
all
is
these scenarios. Like you're creating all these like, but I'm doing that now, I know I've done that now recently, it's not, it's something
What?
I know that's something.
What's your point?
I do all the time. What's your point?
My point is that, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Want? That's the genius of it, is that's what we all do. The imagination gets overtaken by anxiety. What do you want?
What do you want? God damn it.
What do you want? Inside jokes abound. My point is that's a brilliant representation of something that adults go through, which is that leaving... the imagination starts to be applied towards bad things that can happen. No longer thinking about how, whatever, the latest episode of Power Rangers and how that plugs into Donkey Kong and blah, blah, blah. Now it's used to imagine horrible things. I'm one of those people that thought I was a psychopath for a long time, because it's like somebody hands me a baby and you, well, totally, but sociopath. Psychopathy is different. You have that.
This makes you sound more like a psychopath.
Yeah. So somebody hands you a baby and you think about dropping it. I must be crazy. No, that's a natural. Your mind goes to the worst thing you can do specifically so that you'll avoid it. That's the imagination. Right. The imagination is no longer thinking up unique stories. It's worrying about survival and not doing awful things. And then that's where, this is actually a perfect turn into Trap. The perfect segue into Trap about a psychopath, sociopath.
So we're in agreement that Inside Out 2
is the best movie of the year.
Number one, best movie so far.
Yeah.
And Dune 2 is number 2.
100%.
But are we in agreement that this next movie is better than Dune or worse than Dune?
Dude, blows my mind that that's even a possibility. That an M. Night Shyamalan movie could possibly with Dune. I mean,
here's what I will say. This is like my quick review of the movie. Like, I don't think this movie's a good movie. I don't think it's a good movie. But
Trap.
Here's the thing.
Trap. You're saying Trap isn't a good movie.
Trap.
Okay.
I don't think Trap is a good movie. But here's the thing. Here's what I'd say. Because I've talked to my other friends about this movie too, who have seen it, and they're like, "Yeah, it's not a good movie, but like the first 2 acts of this movie are really fucking good." And you're willing to, like, I went into it being like, okay, it's M. Night Shyamalan.
Yeah.
He is his worst enemy. You and I have had so many discussions, even after Knock at the Cabin, about his other movies. He is his worst enemy. His devices, the things that he decides, like, oh, that's a great idea, are terrible ideas.
Can I fix him for a second?
And
can you allow me to fix him?
Goes into really bad ideas.
Allow me to fix him real quick.
Is it based off that video essay we've watched?
No. That one's fascinating. If I could recommend it, I would. What's it called?
I would have to find it. I don't even remember. I don't even remember.
It was something like twists shouldn't be your thing. Why you shouldn't market yourself as the twist guy or something.
Yeah.
So this movie doesn't have a twist. So this flies in the face of that essay. This is like the first movie in a long time.
It does have a twist. This movie does have a twist. It's a very weak twist, but
It's not a
it has
twist
a
in the
twist.
same. It doesn't
No,
redefine the whole movie.
It is a twist.
It doesn't
It
redefine
is a twist.
the essence of a twist.
In the third act when the movie is not good.
A twist redefines a movie. This twist didn't redefine the movie. It simply justified the trap. It just. Oh, why did the trap happen? And we don't give a damn about spoilers on this channel. If you're watching this and you haven't seen these movies, good luck to you.
No.
The whole twist is that the wife of the serial killer guy, which, by the way, it's good to see Josh Hartnett back in movies again.
Dude, I met him. I've met Josh Hartnett before this movie. Yeah, I met him. I worked on it was one of the first Quibi shows. It was when Quibi became a thing. This is like literally right at the pandemic happening.
Did it ever become a thing?
Yeah, Quibi was a
did it just
Here's
flash in the pan and
when
die?
They told me what it was, like I didn't say anything, but in my mind I was like, this is a joke. Like you're serious, right? Like someone had that thought. Jeff Katzenberg was like, yeah, this is a great idea. I'm like, do you know how people work? Do you understand that like I can watch a Netflix show on my phone and just like continuously watch it?
Yeah.
Even regardless if I don't care about how long it is.
And
like,
then there's TikTok.
And
YouTube.
YouTube. Like there's so many other and YouTube.
But if you want something incredibly short, you have TikTok.
You can watch a YouTube thing. You can even if I'm watching a show that I'm trying to watch, I can watch it on my phone on the run. And then if I don't finish the whole show, I'm like, I can stop there and then start up when I want to stop up.
Yeah.
Regardless, I worked on Die Hard, which was the first of. Now they've made it into a series, but essentially we were filming it like it was a movie. It was a 10-episode show. Each episode was like roughly 10 minutes, but like the way that which we filmed the show, like the way that we were given the script, it was almost like. It was like, here's the movie. Like, here's a 90-minute movie, but we're breaking it down into 10-minute episodes. So it was fun. But Josh Hartnett, I met Josh Hartnett.
Is that why it's called Die Hard? Because it's Hartnett?
No. Die Hart because of Kevin Hart.
Oh.
So it was like a play on Die Hard. And the whole story was that Kevin Hart, it's very meta. Kevin Hart is like, I want to be an action hero. I'm tired of being a comedian. I don't like playing second fiddle to The Rock. I want to actually be taken seriously as an action star. So this director, who's played by Jean Reno, this was a really cool show to be on because I was like, I got to meet Jean Reno, John Travolta, Kevin Hart, and Natalie Emmanuel and Josh Hartnett. All on the same show. It was really cool.
Yeah.
But Kevin Hart's like, oh, I'm gonna go and I want to be an action star. He meets this director played by Jean Reno. Jean Reno's like, yeah, you need to go to this school that is going to teach you how to be an action star, and it's called
you are
Ron
taking
Wilcox
longer
Action
than a
School.
Quibi to tell this story. I want to get back to fixing M. Night. Finish your story. Go.
Anyway, I got to meet, but in the run of the story, originally I think they were going to cast Channing Tatum. I think it was what they wanted to do, but they couldn't get him, so they got Josh Hartnett. And this is like before he did Oppenheimer, so no one was like thinking of Josh Hartnett.
He wasn't back.
He was just like...
Now he's back.
He wasn't back.
Yeah.
Now he's back. But like nobody was thinking about him. And so they got Josh Hartnett, and like they mentioned, like I think one of the movies he did after Pearl Harbor, I think was like Homicide Detective or something. I think he did it with Harrison Ford. It wasn't like a well-received movie or whatever. But yeah, I went up to meet him. He was cool. I didn't really have like, I don't have any really interesting stories about him.
M. Night Shyamalan.
All right,
let me fix him.
What's
He's like George Lucas. He's an ideas guy. He could have been the best writer, the best screenwriter ever if he just wouldn't direct. He shouldn't be directing movies. And that's a feeling I have every time I'm watching an M. Night movie. And I think specifically it's because I don't think he really has... Okay, you know how Clint Eastwood is notoriously a single-take director? It's like everything's one take. He does one take and then he moves on.
Clint Eastwood is a lot like Woody Harrelson, and they just like they're workhorses. They just
he does one take and moves on.
They are, they get it done. They're just like, we got to get it done. We're gonna get in the can. I'm gonna do a new movie.
One
next
take
year.
and move on. With M. Night, if you told me that M. Night was that, he's the single take guy and move on, I would believe you. Why? Because everybody in an M. Night movie, Josh Hartnett's character in Trap is a serial killer. He puts on a happy face for everybody. He's very polite. He's very polite to everybody, and then he goes dark, right? But the problem is that everybody in the damn movie is just like that. It's as if everybody is some kind of psychopathic killer. Everybody's so polite and blah, blah. It to the point where it's like, it's obnoxious. And I think that there are whole performances where I don't think M. Night really cares about the nuance of any given performance. I think he just writes words and he casts people and he just says, say these words and then move on. And so, quick anecdote. I made a short.
I do not agree
hang on.
I'll explain my point in a second.
Okay, I made a short in college where I let the actor go for the first take of this short. And it was a comedy, but it's a very dry comedy. His interpretation was, I'll be goofy. Hey, I'm goofy. It's a comedy, right? I'm goofy. And I, after the first take, I said, I want you to play this like it's very dramatic. And he said, well, I thought it was a comedy. Shouldn't it be flamboyant? I said, no. Play this like it's an Oscar-winning role. And the comedy will come from how absurd the situation is. And so he toned it down and he delivered it very earnestly. And he ended up winning Best Actor in this festival. Story. I know, but the audience hasn't heard it. So
we're telling the audience. I know. I got it.
So my point being that
I have a point. Get fucked.
Okay, I knew you were gonna do that. Would you? If you weren't hundreds of miles away, I want to wring your fucking neck. Anyway, so the point being that a director steps in because the actor doesn't know. The actor just is, their anxiety emotion in their head is steering the ship, and I just want to be good. I want to be good. I want to be good. The director steps in and says, I liked what you did in that first take, but that doesn't fit. I need you to be like this. And then they change their performance. I don't think M. Night's doing that in this movie. I think M. Night's just like, say the words. Agree with you. And I think he spurgs out on not understanding anybody's performance. There's no nuance at all.
I do not agree with you, but it's not in what you think, right? Like, I don't agree with you in that you're saying that M. Night doesn't care about their performance. Unfortunately, I think it is shown, if you watch all of M. Night's movies, you start to see that M. Night has a style and a way that he wants his actors to speak, almost in the same sense that Wes Anderson has a way in which his characters carry their characters.
Yeah.
Wes Anderson's works because it's comedic and that it's like, I'm going to be really polite and then I'm going to tell you to fuck off.
Yeah.
That's funny because there's a juxtaposition between, that's the word of the night, kids, juxtaposition. Remember it.
Juxtaposition?
Juxtaposition, baby. That's the word of the night because I'm going to use it a lot today. Anyway, you just put the words. But I think with M. Night, for some weird reason, wants his characters to be not deadpan, but like almost matter of fact, but in this weird like alien way where like I don't think anybody talks like
everybody's
that,
like
ever.
They're in a commercial. Hi.
And I agree.
Hello.
Exactly.
I'm very polite.
Exactly.
Hello. How are you doing today? I'm doing fine.
Yeah,
how
exactly.
are you?
It's part of me. Here's the thing. When I watch this movie, here's the thing, Charlie. My thoughts on the movie again. When I watch the movie, the first two acts of the movie, essentially like the beginning and then like them in the concert and everything, I'm on board. I'm actually like, I like this movie. I'm engaged with this movie. I liked the cat and mouse of it. I love Josh Hartnett trying to figure out how he's going to get out. I am forgiving, as I'm watching the movie, I'm forgiving of the performances that are being given and the dialogue, the delivery of the dialogue, and how bad the dialogue is at times.
Same.
I'm forgiving it because I'm so entrapped in like, how is he going to get out of this? Like, what is he going to do? And I loved it. I loved the first two acts. The
I
movie,
agree.
Like really
I'm
nosedives.
shocked that I agree.
Nosedives the movie nosedives for me. Like probably when he figures out
When he
that,
revealed
like,
himself.
oh,
The moment he revealed himself.
before that, the movie nosedives for me. It's like it's the moment when I'm like, oh, they gave him too much M. Night power. They gave M. Night too much freedom. Is when the medics were like, oh, we need to keep this guy. He's great. And I was like, this is awkward. This is starting to get. This is. I'm starting to see the hill. I'm starting to see him creeping down.
Yeah.
Down the M. Night roller coaster.
That's
of, like,
why
this is
M.
gonna
Night
be
needs to
shit.
be a writer. If he was just a writer, he would be hailed as an absolute genius. And let me tell you why. Because he would come up with really interesting stories, and he would write those, and somebody else would direct it, and the bad writing would be naturally filtered. It would eventually, might be in the script.
You would hand it off to somebody else to be like, I'm going to fix your script and fix the
Can
bullshit.
we keep him? He's such a gem. He's so good. And what McCurdy's talking about is that there's a scene where basically just a quick context is that there's a serial killer that is trapped in a Taylor Swift concert, and he can't get out because all the exits are covered by FBI and cops, and they know that there's a serial killer at this event, and they're doing everything they can. Why is the latency on the? Why is the stream still garbage?
Just keep going to your point. Just keep talking. Just keep talking about your point.
I don't even know if we're still live. Anyway, so I'm just gonna keep
so
going.
Angry.
Power through.
You're so angry.
My point is that context. He's trapped, and so the movie is following. It sets up a completely unique premise. There's no movie like this that I know
of this movie. I love the premise of the movie because like Taylor Swift concert was just last year. Like everyone was talking about it, and so you had that relevance of like, oh yeah, there was a big concert that all these girls wanted to go to, and I love that like you could insert yourself as like dads trying to bring their kids to these concerts and having to like fit in and feel that, and like I love that. That was great.
Yeah,
that was fantastic. And then the fact that he's a serial killer, like extra add-on, like that's great. That was fantastic. I love that.
So
anyway.
You can keep talking if you like. I'm trying to make sure that we're even still live. Because everything's saying that we are, but it's like messing up.
Towards the end of what I would say is the end of the second act of the movie, when he's starting to figure out a way to get out.
Good. I believe we're still good. So okay, so
by the end of the movie, when he's starting to figure out how he can get out, he coaxes some dude into saying, "Hey, my daughter's got cancer." There's a moment where like the Taylor Swift actress, who's actually one of M. Night's daughters, which is another like nepotism bullshit thing in this movie. He's like, hey, she has this moment where they bring up somebody from the audience to be on stage with her. Hey, my daughter's got cancer. Can you get, like she really just wants to be here. And then M. Night, who's in the movie, he plays this person on the stage, is like, oh yeah, totally, we'll get your daughter onto the stage. And so then he figures out a way that he can sneak himself in backstage so he can get out of there, because no one's gonna, because backstage is the only way in and out.
So here's the thing,
without being caught.
The movie is following again, sets up a really unique, one of a kind, as far as I know, premise, and it follows a certain logic for a long while, right? It's okay, I'm in a trap, and how do I get out of it? And then they even have an FBI profiler who's, over earpieces saying he's going to do this and he's going to do that. He'll probably try to pull the fire alarm. He'll try to do these things that he can then, once he knows that they're onto him, that he'll probably do this or that, he switches up his plan. Let me get in with an employee, and maybe I'll steal their pass, and I'll be really nice to him, so he'll give me insider information, and so I'll continuously try to outsmart the hundreds of FBI and cops that are at this location. So that's all cool.
Best part of the movie.
That's all cool.
The movie is worth watching
because it's like it's in the trap and slowly following a logical pattern to get out, but eventually. And you can see the pen. You can see M. Night's pen going, what do I do now? How do I get out of this now? And it happens, for me, the nosedive is when he reveals himself, which at first I didn't think was such a bad thing, but over time it ended up being the bad move. So he eventually because he got his daughter in with the star. He got with Lady Raven, which
the
is
singer.
Lady
The Lady
Gaga,
Raven
Taylor
singer.
Swift, and so
Whatever.
he gets backstage with her because early on it was like if you get backstage, there's no cops, you can get out of here. So the goal becomes let's get backstage. So he manages to pull that off, and then he wants a moment with Lady Gaga. So he goes into her dressing room, and that's when he reveals himself to her. He's like, I'm a serial killer. And then it's, I'm going to kill a random guy. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill this stranger. And the movie then at that point relies on this Lady Raven character actually being a good person versus like any real pop star wouldn't. If it's between them and a stranger, they're not going to give a damn, right? Like it's just like I don't know who that guy is. I don't
do
care.
not agree. I do not agree. I think I would say that if they knew, because the stakes that are given in the story, that she is already in on the thing, like she already knows the operation. I'm willing to buy that she'd be like, yeah, I don't want somebody else to die because of this whole thing. So
because you're plugging yourself into
you.
it. You're plugging yourself into it.
I don't think so. I don't agree. I don't agree. But regardless, continue.
So
continue
okay,
what
I'll give you that. Let's go. So I'm going to be more cynical. I'm going to be cynical and say that's a bad move. You're saying, no, let's give Lady Raven the benefit of the doubt.
I'm going to give her a benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
I think that she would, and Taylor Swift would do the same thing.
Fair.
If it was Taylor Swift, I think she would do the same thing. That's what I'm saying.
You're adorable. McCurdy, you're adorable.
You're adorable because you're an asshole.
Taylor Swift is going to go home with a serial killer to save a stranger. Okay, but I'll give you that. You be the optimist. I'll be the realist.
She's in that point where she's like, I don't want this person to die. But what am I going to do?
Yes,
that's all I'm saying.
You be the naive optimist. I'll be the cynical realist. And
I'm just being a little more optimist because
sure. I'm saying move forward.
Bringing the mood down.
I'm saying move forward. So let's assume that she.
About a movie.
Let's assume that she's
an
angel.
Does not matter.
Let's assume she's an angel, and let's keep moving. So then she's like, I'm gonna save this random guy tied up in the basement of a serial killer. So let me invite myself over, because the escape ends up being, you're gonna put us in your limousine. We're gonna. That's how Josh Hartnett, serial killer, is going to escape the trap by way of the pop star. Pop star gets them out of the police zone, and that's when she decides, no, I'm gonna nail this guy. I want to go to your house. Instead of, I don't know, dropping them. Instead of dropping them off and then immediately calling the cops and being like, it was this guy and they could easily find him, she wants to save. The stakes are that she wants to save this stranger. So she goes to the house, and then I assume you would agree, that's where suddenly the movie is being held up by the performance of the Nepo baby of M. Night's daughter, who...
the movie switches. Yeah, this movie switches protagonist actually too.
Yeah,
because the most of the movie, as far as protagonist being like, that's your main character, that's who you're following.
You're rooting for a serial killer.
He's a good guy or a bad guy, but you kind of are rooting for Josh Hartnett. You kind of do want him to escape, because you're like, I'm intrigued. I want to see how he does this. I want to see how he gets out. So Josh Hartnett, through the first two acts of the movie, is the protagonist, and then when you get to the third act of the movie, Lady Raven becomes the protagonist. It switches gears. She becomes the protagonist, and then she's like trying to figure out how she's going to save this guy. And that's when the movie really, really becomes like an M. Night movie. I am still saying, I think the nosedive's earlier than that. I think it's when there's a moment in the movie where, I guess backstage they have like a medic station. And I guess this is normal for a lot of big concerts where people like there's a lot of things that could happen to you at a concert that you might not be aware of, but like you could get exhausted, you could be dehydrated, you could be drink too much alcohol, whatever it might be. You be under influence of too many drugs. There's going to be medics there. They're going to try to take care of you, right? So apparently there's this really just awkward moment of like Josh Hartnett uses that like gain favor with Lady Raven. And then the medics are like, oh, we love this guy, we want to keep him. Only after like a short piece of dialogue. Like it just doesn't really like land with you. He's not doing that much for anybody to say, we want to keep this guy, we like him.
Yeah.
That's to me when the movie is like the tipping point of when the roller coaster is going to go, oh, we're going to go to Shitsville. Before that. But I do agree, like even that third act is not
Why
great.
that moment though? Why that moment? Because
that was
of the
moment
reaction
when
of the
I
staff?
realized, yeah, the reaction of staff. I think that was the moment when I realized that, like, oh, like I have been forgiving some of the performances prior to this because of I've been kind of more, I've been stuck on the story. I'm like, I don't really care anymore because I know M. Night's like bag of tricks, or even not his bag of tricks, his devices that he likes to employ, especially in his the way that he likes dialogue to be delivered. It's kind of like, I'm gonna forgive it. I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And then you get to that moment, and I was like, that was when I was like, oh, this movie's starting to tip for me. And then that's like the cusp. That's like when the movie's like this. So when all of the stuff that you're talking about, it's like a little bit way after that, actually.
Yeah.
And but even then,
my point being, at that point,
are all awkward.
At that point,
they're all awkward.
At that point, every single ancillary character has already been awful, and I mean awful as in their delivery seems like a single take where they didn't have any direction and they just said the words.
I don't think it's a single take. I think it's literally.
I'm not saying that I actually think it's a
that.
single take. I'm saying that M. Night doesn't see, and across all of his movies beyond the ones that made him a hit in the first place, every performance of ancillary characters that aren't A-list actors is so just like a bite and smile commercial actor where there's
but I would even
literally
argue that
zero
it's
nuance.
It's like, I would also argue that it's like it's not just nuance. It's almost like they didn't really like analyze the script and really like think about like why are these characters like doing what an actual good actor is going to do.
The T-shirt salesman, right away it was like, oh god, here we go again.
Yeah.
The T-shirt salesman.
Right.
So they go to him and his daughter go to buy a T-shirt. There's a little fight with another girl. Josh Hartnett's character says, "Go ahead and let the girl have the T-shirt." And the T-shirt salesman says, "Hey, you are good people. You have family values and stuff. I like family values, so I like you." And you're like, it was like he was reading it off of cue cards as if he'd never heard
that's what I mean. I
read the
don't agree.
words before.
I don't disagree.
It's so okay. Sorry, my point being,
it's so robotic and so alien. It doesn't feel human. It does not feel natural.
My point isn't to harp on that. My point is that I was so used to that by the time we got to the medical station that I was like, okay, everybody in this movie's awful. That I'm more engaged by the unique premise and the story going on, and this unique trap that I don't care about the acting. But where the movie, so I'm like, okay, I can accept that the acting is bad. Who cares? It's like when I'd recommend to people that they watch the Jack Reacher show, and they come back to me and say the acting's terrible, and I go, who cares about the acting? The story is fantastic.
You're saying the story's great.
I'm like, I don't care. Where it starts to falter, where it starts to fail is when the movie switches to the protagonist being, and only briefly, it switches to the protagonist being the pop star, and she's doing stupid things like locking herself. She steals the cell phone of the serial killer, locks herself in the bathroom, and for some reason the serial killer doesn't just kick the door in. I mean, at that point, he would just kick the door in. You know,
there's a lot of just very awkward.
It's just awkward. It's awkward, and this is what I mean. M. Night shouldn't be directing. Any good director would have better performances from everybody, and they would smooth over the edges of the script. They'd go, no, this doesn't seem natural that this guy would just sit idly outside the bathroom door yelling at his family while the person with his cell phone that could lead to where his victim is.
In the scene
like kick the door in, dude. Kick the door in.
That scene has no. The scene you're referring to is like she's like, I like the idea on face value. I like this idea.
Like a writer.
Like, oh, you're pops.
But if you're the director, you're like, I like the idea, but let's do something different. Yeah,
because what happens in the scene is that essentially she's using her influence as an She's a pop star. She's gonna have
Anybody
Instagram
out there
influence. She's
know
gonna have-
where a lion statue is that's partially broken with
I
a
like
blue
the
dormite?
idea, but then the execution of the idea is so absurd, and it just feels so awkward.
It
and
is
unnatural
cringeworthy.
And unhuman.
I
is
was
very
I was
cringy.
sitting there going,
It's very cringy.
I was doing this. I mean, if I'm doing this in
Yeah.
a movie, that's a really bad sign. And this happened in that. There were two main moments that come to memory, and it's the bathroom scene where I'm going, okay, this movie's lost me now. Now I'm watching an M. Night movie, and I'm going,
Yeah.
hard cringeworthiness. The second one was a few minutes later so Josh Hartnett eventually gets into the bathroom. He gets his phone back, and he marches her into the garage, and he puts her in the car. And then once they're in the car, she starts the pop star starts doing
I don't
Jason.
remember.
She starts doing the Jason thing, the Friday the 13th thing, where it's I think it maybe whatever 3, 4, 5 where they pretend to be Jason's mom. And they're going, Jason, you're a bad boy.
No,
you're being a bad boy. But
because
that
at this point in the
works
story,
on a
they
dullard.
established-
that works on
like, they
the
established
literal
that, like,
retard
he
that
has
Jason
this
is.
whole thing, yeah.
But
Yeah.
suddenly she's going, you're a naughty boy. She's trying to be his mom to like psych him out, like literally psych him out. And he's going, what are you doing? I'm an adult. You're not going to defeat me, the serial killer, by pretending to be my mom. And that's where, again, I was cringing again. I was like, oh God, And then the movie has several endings from that point on.
That was the worst part of the movie.
Several
I think
endings.
the movie, if I could, like, if you wrapped like the biggest problem, because I went with a group of people, and when usually we go with a group of people, everyone's going to have their own level of how they reacted to the movie. And I think everybody on the same level at least was like, yeah, this movie had too many endings, or it just didn't know when it to end.
Yeah.
And that was like by the point of like, because one of my friends, I do another podcast with classic American movies, Chris Kelly.
You cheat on me?
His point was, yeah, I'm cheating on you, bro. Sorry.
What?
What? I'll every once in a while I'll guest on his show. But one of his points he was continuously making to me, he's like, I would have liked it more if when Josh Hartnett, because what happens is she leaves, they arrest Josh Hartnett or whatever, or they try to get him, and then it turns out he takes the limo driver and beats him up, and then like Lady Raven ends up in the limo with Josh Hartnett. And he was like, that should have been the end of the movie. That should have been leading into a sequel to the next movie. Like have a sequel to this movie where Josh Hartnett has the pop star. That could have been an interesting movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have actually seen that like the second iteration of this.
Now she's trapped.
Now she's trapped.
Yeah.
So then the movie ends there, and like that was kind of I thought that was like an kind of an interesting idea. But I do think the movie just like it, like you said, it's like you see M. Night's pen being like, I gotta make a twist here.
Yeah.
So what ends up when you and I were arguing earlier is like the twist of the movie, the twist, which isn't really a twist. Like I get it.
It's
Is that you find out that that his wife is the reason why this trap all began, because the wife kind of had an idea, and I guess like in this town where all this was happening, of course it's Philadelphia, that this butcher murder has been going on for quite a while, and it's been created quite a ruckus that everybody has been talking about it, that she kind of put 2 and 2 together and saw. So she left the ticket of the
T-Swift.
Of the T-Swift concert so that the police could find it. And then you're like, okay, cool. And then it's like, it's revealed the mom kind of already knew ahead of time, but wasn't for sure. And then you're like, okay, sure. Like, you're just like, all right.
Because in the beginning, the whole thing was, he's kind of taken by surprise. How did they know that I would be here? They leave it.
They don't explain exactly why.
And they didn't really need to explain it. And that's why it's not a twist. It's just covering a detail that doesn't, and then whatever. And then he's caught. And then, the ending is that he's going to get away, which I liked. I think I'm shocked
hated
that I
the way
actually
that
liked this movie. I
I
did like it.
hated
I just hated
hated how it ended.
I had to force my way through the scenes where the Nepo baby tried to be an actress for a while. Apparently, she's a really gifted singer. I think she wrote and performed all those songs, right? Didn't there was a credit that
Great.
said that
That's
she
fantastic. I just thought that the end of the movie, so it's spoiling the movie, the end of the movie,
Spoil
is
away.
they arrest Josh Hartnett for the 4th time in the movie. They arrest Josh Hartnett and they finally
Again.
bring him away for the
Yeah.
4th time. For
Yeah.
what feels like the 4th time. It's not the 4th time, but it feels like it.
Yeah.
And then they get him in handcuffs and they throw him into the paddy wagon. And but before they can, he stops because they had set this up. They had set this whole thing up that he had paper clips this whole time. He had paper clips, and then
You and the inside jokes. Constant inside jokes between us that nobody's gonna
he had
understand.
his paper clips. No, he's not gonna. No one's gonna understand. No one's gonna watch this. They're not gonna go down the end of this. They're not gonna watch that joke.
Yeah.
But essentially, they had set up that there was OCD, that he has this OCD that he has to like fix things. They set it up in the movie. At least they get to that point. They set it up.
Paperclips.
So his
We should
OCD
explain paperclips.
is
I'd rather talk about paperclips than the rest of this moment.
of
What
crap.
paperclips
But anyway,
means.
essentially, in the end of the movie, he has OCD. They had set that up, and that he wanted to fix his daughter's bike, or this bike that was sitting out on his lawn. So the SWAT team is like, yeah, we'll let him do that, which just doesn't make any fucking sense.
You're dealing with
And it's
Hannibal
almost
Lecter, and you're
it's
gonna let
almost
him
like-
pick up a bike. Yeah.
We caught him. We
Yeah.
caught him. We respect him. You know, it was almost
Yeah.
like the scene was like, oh, we caught him. We respect him. We'll let him do this one little
Yeah.
task of fixing this bike that's on the ground, which is so stupid.
Yeah.
And then the end of the movie, it's like he's in the police.
But I like it though. I mean, I do like it. I did
fucking hate
like
this
the
movie.
end of this movie. I
hated the end of this movie.
if the pop star had not been brought into the plot, and that's what I mean. The logic, the movie is following a certain logic, and this is one of those movies that is an interesting case study on perspective, because you find yourself following a horrible serial killer and being like you said, I'm interested to see how he's going to get out of the situation, where the movie easily could have followed the perspective of the FBI profiler, right? Where the profiler is at a stadium during a concert and has to find a needle in a haystack, essentially. That's an interesting story in its own right. But instead, we're following the killer trying to get out, and the movie is following a certain logic. One of my favorite parts, because the opening of this movie is my personal hell. You know me, I don't like to watch trailers. I don't watch trailers. I like to walk into a movie not knowing anything, and suddenly being put into a Taylor Swift concert, I was dying. I was fully filling out the shoes of Josh Hartnett's character, because Cooper, his name's Cooper. I was Cooper. Yeah. I'm in a space where I'm going, I hate this. If this was my daughter, I would disown her. I hate, once again, plugging my book. I have an entire chapter in this book about how much I hate idol worship. I don't like celebrities. I don't like I think people who worship celebrities are dullards and idiots. And that moment in the beginning of the movie where they're all the fans are waiting for Lady Raven to get off.
Like, when is she coming out? And
she's
then
gonna
the
get off her
security
bus.
guy comes out, the PA comes out, and everyone's like, and then they're just like, oh.
And then it's like, she waved at me. I hate that it's infantile. I understand why kids do it, but everybody is stupid. I don't like celebrity worship. It's literally idol worship, and it's evil in my book, because
you get after a while, I'll just say, from the not crazy person in the room that is drunk. That's me. I will say that.
What?
Like, after a while,
drunk idiot, drunk.
That is drunk.
Shit.
That is drunk. I will say that I think after a while, when you're around celebrities long enough, you just start to be like,
they're people.
Okay, like, what am I gonna? They are people. They're human beings. They have human tendencies.
Dude, now we're back
Sometimes
to
they're good,
Dune.
sometimes they're bad.
Now we're back to Dune. They're not messiahs. They are false prophets.
not.
Don't put your faith in Taylor Swift. Don't put your worldview into her music. Go to her concerts, but don't praise her
but
like
you don't,
she's
like,
Jesus
freak
Christ.
The fuck out
Yeah.
No.
Don't put your stock in false idols. These are false idols.
I'm saying it's like once you're around enough celebrities, you start to get the flow of things, and you're just like, what am I going to say to this person?
They're people, and they're self-interested. They're self-interested people naturally.
To say to that person, because if you have like actual aspirations and goals, like for me, making movies that are like a bigger film or like making a big movie or whatever, like going up to an actor and asking him about like acting, I was like, I've asked 100 people, I've seen like 100 interviews about like what to do and what not to do. Like, why do I need to talk to this person other than to say, hey, how's your day going? That's it. I don't give a shit.
Exactly.
They're just human beings.
And if you treat them like human beings, if you just treat them like human beings, they respect you.
You're dealing the day. We're got to work on this movie. We got to make this thing. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. Like,
the number one.
Like that's the end of it. You're
don't be that guy.
Whatever.
The wisdom of the day is don't be that guy. Don't be the person, sign my tits. So anyway, getting back on point, I was in hell. I was with Cooper in hell watching this concert take place. And for a second, I was like, okay, all I know about this movie is that it has to do with a serial killer. Is this guy going to start killing people at the concert? Because I'm on board for that, But it starts to slowly, he's starting to see, wow, there's a lot of cops here. And why do they keep leading away guys who kind of vaguely look like me? And so that's all interesting. But the moment that the movie becomes about the pop star, I work backwards, right? Her Lady Raven going to their house, suddenly the movie, I'm just like, this is bad. This hurts to watch. Tracing that back, where that went wrong was the moment that, like I keep saying, the movie followed a certain amount of logic until M. Night didn't know what to do because the character didn't know what to do. The character's like, okay, do I pull the fire alarm? No, because the FBI is saying he'll probably try to pull the fire alarm. If the fire alarm goes off, don't let men out, which is ridiculous. It's like if he would have pulled the fire alarm, he probably would have gotten away. Because how you're gonna tell 3,000? They say there are 3,000 men there. You're gonna tell a bunch of men the building's on fire, but you can't get out. No, they're gonna just push through.
What I don't really get, and I guess they never cover their bases with that. What you're talking about is they never really establish like what evidence, what do they have on the butcher that they would be able to profile the guys that they're pulling. Because in the movie, as the movie's going on, Josh Hartnett's constantly going like, oh shit, like they're getting another dude. And and he's more concerned. He's less concerned about what's going on up on stage and more concerned with what's going on in the stands as he's watching these other dads getting pulled from the stands by police officers. And what I always thought was weird was like, well, what are the police officers doing? Like when they bring these dads in, what are they interviewing? What kind of questions are they asking? And you never really get a sense of that. You just know that like, oh no, like
everybody's civil rights are being violated for no reason. And
they're just like, oh, we gotta find this killer, which I get. Here's the thing, I get that. But at the same time, I'm like,
there's a lot of suspension of disbelief. There's a lot of just go with it in this movie, and I'm on board because it's unique. I'm willing to play along with this movie
because I want to find out how he escaped.
But then the movie betrays you. The movie betrays you the moment that Cooper says, Cooper/M. Night says, I can't come up with a clever escape, so I'm just going to tell the pop star, I'm gonna kill this random guy unless you get me out of here. That's where I was like, F you.
The movie does set that up. The movie does do this thing where because I think, and it works, is that the movie does set up that you're like, okay, this guy's the killer. So if he is a killer, who is he gonna kill next if he's that serious? And then they do show that he has, like, he goes back to the bathroom and he pulls up on his phone. He has his next victim that is at some location. And I guess we're assumed, like, part of us are like, are we assuming this is at his house? Of course it's not. But we see that it's at, like, we see there is, so it raises the stakes in that you're like,
just because it was set up doesn't mean that it's good.
Set up. Hold on. No, I think it does, though. I think it does at least say, like, oh, like, that at least gives you a little more, like, like it raises the stakes. But here's the thing. Regardless, I am agreeing with you when we get to the point where we're like kind of switching protagonists, and he reveals like who he is. Like part of me is like expecting the movie to end, because I'm expecting we're gonna get towards the end of the movie. The movie doesn't know when to end, so it just keeps on going, and it's like, oh well, like I'm gonna pull the M. Night Twist game, and I'm gonna say, oh wait, he didn't get caught. He didn't get caught.
Yeah.
It actually, he snuck out the back, and then you think that they're gonna get him, and then he doesn't get him, and then he takes her. Like we didn't even talk about the limo bit. Like when he steals her in the limo, and I'm still trying to baffled, and I kind of want to rewatch the movie to be like, what was the logic and like. The police never saw him get out of the limo because there was like a bunch of people around.
That was another
like,
M. Night moment.
Somebody,
the instead of just a
wouldn't
cop
someone
going,
have seen somebody get out of the limo?
So the cop walks up to the driver's seat, and instead of just saying, "He's gone," instead he does the M. Night thing where he goes, "He must have switched a thing." And then he did another thing, and where everybody talks like they're autistic in this fucking movie.
Well, Charlie, I didn't get to do my behind the scenes of the movie, but M. Night is severely autistic.
I think he's a Spurg, dude. I honestly think he's a Spurg. He should be writing these movies. I
have no idea.
But he shouldn't be directing them. So anyway, but my point being that regardless of, I kind of welcomed the several endings because I'm like, okay, he escapes. And then he almost gets caught, and then he escapes again. I was more on board with that than the sequence at the house with the Nepo baby and her. I'm your mother,
going into the bathroom, and they're like, "Who has the thing?"
All of that was awful. All of that was the moment she left the movie. It was great.
I did not like that.
But
I thought
again, though,
it was a train wreck.
But again, I'm living in the past where the moment that M. Night ran out of ideas, because if the whole movie took place at the concert, I would have loved it. I would have loved it. But instead, he didn't know what to do. And he didn't know how to get Cooper out of the situation. He didn't know how to get Cooper out of the situation, so he fell back on something which is stupid, which is, hey, I'm going to kill this stranger unless you let me, a serial killer, you're going to smuggle me out of here. Because he didn't, because he couldn't think of anything clever.
We've been talking
he couldn't think of anything clever.
Circles. We've been talking in circles. Really, all I care about at this point is I still think this is the bottom of the list. Like I know that Dune feels like you see the movie and you're like, oh, this wasn't that good. I still think for all the things that we shit on for Dune, I'm like, Dune is just a better executed movie on all fronts. Like even the writing is better. There's no moment where I'm like, I don't believe this. Dude, this is bullshit.
When we were still at the concert,
like, yes, there's two squeezed.
When we were still at the concert, and it was just that the acting was bad with most of the ancillary characters, I'm sitting there going, whoa, I'm enjoying this more than Dune. This is blowing my mind. This is an M. Night movie. This should be the bottom without even watching the movie. And then you're right. As it went along, I'm like, okay, this has made enough missteps that there's no way that you could put the incredibly classy, even though I'm apathetic towards it, the incredibly classy, just beautiful Dune Part 2 is just going to be better than Trap. But there was a time where Trap was a better movie, and I was having fun. There's a moment
when you're like, you're on board. You are like, I like the first two acts of this movie. I like the pull into the story. I like how he's doing all the cat and mouse stuff.
Yes,
I love that stuff.
Even the sequence where his daughter went on stage.
Bullshit. I'm forgiving of all of his stupid bullshit with like him talking to people and like how bad those performances are. I'm forgiving of it. I'm like, fuck it, I don't care. I want to know how he escapes. Like, how is he gonna do this? It seems like I'm on board. I loved it.
Everything I just said.
I hated it, then I loved it.
Everything I just said about how I hate idol worship. When the daughter went on stage with her celebrity idol, I actually got chills several times because the daughter was such a good actress at selling how significant that was to her to go on stage and dance and
I
goof
thought
off.
she was good.
It was
I think
adorable.
I think she's good. Like
Yeah.
I think she plays off really well in the first act at least. I think she plays off first and second act of the movie. I think she plays off really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we get to the again, saying this, but when we get to like when they leave, that's when the movie just starts to go like it starts to go into the realm of how many endings can we shove in a movie? Is it Return of the King's era of like shoving endings of a movie?
Dude.
But Return of the King's is a different level.
Dude,
it's a different
people
level.
talking about Lord of the Rings having too many endings. Those are the real retards. Those are the idiots. Oh, why? I remember sitting in the theater every time there was a quote ending. I was like, "Don't end, don't end, don't end." That was me being 12 years old, 14 years old, being like, "Don't end, don't end, don't end." With this movie, I was like, "Good, it's ending," and then it wouldn't end. And I'm like, "Good, it's ending now," and then it wouldn't end. So there's a difference.
To be fair, okay, so like let's count it out. So like the movie ends, like okay, you think the movie's ending
when the garage is
we're gonna go to the house in the garage. The police are gonna come. Oh wait, it doesn't end.
Yeah,
and then it goes to the limo sequence, and then it's like he takes him in limo, and then they don't catch him.
Yeah.
Right now, okay, the movie's gonna end. No, it's not gonna end. Then we go back to the house, and the mom's there, and then the dad's there, and then they have kind of like this reconnecting moment. And then we reveal like why the concert all happened and everything else. And then you're like, oh, the movie's gonna end, and then it doesn't exactly end there. And then we get to the end, the actual end of the movie, and then he's bringing Bharat out to the paddy wagon, and the bike. I didn't even get to this, but so the end of the movie, he fixes the bike. He sets up the bike, and everyone's like, "Oh man, like we respect this guy. Like we never caught him. We're gonna let him move this bike." But because he does that, he is able to take one of the spokes out of the wheels of the bike and shoves it into his sleeve. And then at the end of the movie, it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get out now." So we set up for like maybe another trap sequel, and like he escapes supposedly. Yeah. But this movie just doesn't know when to end. The movie does not. Like it's like M. Night just again, it's a movie where like,
I would be on board for.
Set up a really great thing, and then he doesn't know his own devices.
I would be all about it if that sequence of the let me just randomly go to your house because I'm really concerned about this random guy that you have tied up in a basement somewhere. There wasn't enough of Lady Raven being set up as some kind of secret angel. Like basically Lady Raven as a cynical adult. I don't trust that any major celebrity would give a damn about some random person unless it was built up that way, right? And so what they did though, hang on. What they did was they had another musician be the asshole, right? The guy who's like, "Hey yo, I said give me a mocha, bitch." You know, like that guy was
I forgot about that.
He was the celebrity that we are that's what you would think as a cynical adult. That's what you would think that the uppity, super famous person would be is, you know, I said latte and you brought me a mocha and now I'm going to kill you. He kind of was that. But I think if you would have maybe established Lady Raven as more of a genuine person, like maybe when she gets off that bus, right? She comes and she hangs out with all the fans, and she gets in real close, and maybe she says hi to our main girl. You know, that would have set up that, oh, she's actually a really down to earth. She's not some celebrity that thinks her shite don't stink. You know, there was none of that though. It was maybe felt in her. You know, she would be up on stage and doing the whole thing where she's telling everybody, you know, go after your dreams.
I get where you're going.
Follow your
going with
dreams.
it, but I do feel like the movie's like, well, we're already on the tangent and we're already on the eye view of Cooper. That it's like to do that would be compromising of like the Cooper story. So I do feel like I part of me is like. I have been in these positions where you're like, you want to be like, oh, I want to switch perspectives and go to this person. But it's like, if by doing so, like you're going to ruin something else. So it's like pick and choose.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to go here? So I kind of see both where I'm like,
dude, he ran out of ideas and he had Cooper give the jig was up when he went into her dressing room
Sure.
and said, "I'm the killer."
It doesn't
That's where the
matter
movie failed.
because-
The movie failed because it should have all taken place in the concert hall, and it didn't. And that would have been really clever to just have this really very simple story told in a very complex way. It failed. The moment they left, it failed. The moment they left, it was an L.
I don't
M.
agree.
Night screwed up the moment they left the concert hall.
I don't agree.
Full stop.
I agree that I do like the idea of them leaving and going someplace, another locale as the third act, essentially. But I don't agree that that was a bad move into saying that they leave towards the house. But I don't like how in which the house stuff lands, where then we're like continually the story more and more and more when we should have ended sooner. That I don't like. I do feel like the third act does feel natural. Like, oh, we're going into extra innings. We're going someplace outside of where the story started. But I don't agree that it should have just ended at the stadium. If that makes sense.
Not ended at the stadium. It should have continued on. The rest of the runtime should have taken place in the stadium.
I do like the idea of him escaping. I do like the idea of him almost getting scot-free.
He leaves the trap halfway through the movie. The movie is called Trap, and he leaves the trap halfway through.
And then he goes to the house.
And we have the worst couple of scenes at the house. And then we have all the endings.
That's what I'm saying. I wish that was better. I wish the house was better.
So diagnose the problem. What is the problem then? That the house should have been better? The house was doomed from the start. The whole movie was doomed the moment they left the concert hall. That's what I'm saying. It was doomed by that poor choice.
I think it makes sense. It logically, to me, made sense that they would try to do that. Because I do think it escalated the stakes when she's like in the car with him. So part of me does see how they would have done a protagonist switch at that moment, because you're like, well, we can't leave this movie with you rooting for the villain. You probably should be rooting for a good guy, essentially. But I do think it is weird that maybe it would have been better if it was maybe it was the daughter. Instead, we were swatched to the daughter's perspective instead of being on to the Lady Raven's perspective.
Dude, okay, hang on, follow that.
Maybe that would have made it better.
Follow that. Can you imagine if Lady Raven managed to get the daughter alone, and it's like, hey, your dad is bad. What are you talking about? My dad literally got me on stage with you. My dad is the greatest human being ever. This is the best day of my life.
No, your
dad is a scumbag, serial killer. That stuff is more interesting, but instead we followed the poor. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, M. Night. Your daughter is a gifted musician, but not a terrific actress. Yeah, follow the better actress, which is the daughter, and let's follow her perspective as she has to weigh the whole thing of my dad is awesome. No, he's actually really bad. That's good
My
stuff.
point is this, saying that I don't think in a perfect world, I think going, and I still think in the story of the movie, I think going to the house logically, I think does make sense. I just think that leaving that
one could make it work.
Stadium for a third act would have worked better, because I feel like I think we felt, as the audience, I think we would have felt robbed if it just ended at the stadium. But adding that extra element of going outside,
not if he would have died
stadium,
or something. If he would have ended up dying,
then it would have to been I think it would have to been. You would have to have set something up really spectacular for me to
And that's what I'm saying. He couldn't think up the spectacular ending, so it was like, what do I do? Okay, he'll reveal himself to the pop star, and then she'll get him out, and then we'll do a bunch of shenanigans at the house.
And I do like that. Here's the thing. I do like that, because I do like it adds a little bit of it adds some stakes. It adds some tension where she's like, oh shit, this guy's a serial killer.
Wait, hang on.
I'm stuck in a room with him.
Hard pause. His whole thing let me knock out.
I want a soft pause.
Let me knock it soft and a half pause. Let me knock out and how many movies have done this? But this would have been the obvious thing. The moment where he knocks out a SWAT team member and trades clothes with him, he could have done that at the concert hall. he would have had to have abandoned his daughter. I mean, there were several times where I was like, "Hey, dude, why don't you just abandon your daughter? You'll be fine.
Right,
She'll
but
be
then
fine.
I wouldn't
Get
do
out
that.
of there." You know?
I think that's where I'm like the psychology of it. It's like, ooh, like I see where someone would be like, yeah, like he could have done that, but then it's like, yeah, but that's your daughter.
Sure,
And
but what I'm saying is,
I don't know if the
SWAT
character that is
costume
written on the page.
Get the SWAT costume and then pull the fire alarm.
To do that.
That's the easy out. That's the logical out. The moment he exposed himself to the pop star, that's when I went, okay, this isn't going to turn out well. This is going to be garbage. And we agree. It's the bottom of the list. And for me, that's my diagnosis. That was where M. Night ran out of ideas. He had a really good idea. He had 1,000% a unique premise, something that we have never seen before. A serial killer is trapped at a T-Swift concert. Genius. I
liked it.
I'll give it genius.
I like the
But
premise.
He ran out of ideas.
The execution sucked.
And he exposed himself to T-Swift, and that's when it went south. For you, it went south.
I really do think. I think our list so far for this 2024 is Inside Out 2, Dune 2, and then Trap.
I already plugged it in.
You already did it.
I already did.
Because it's like you could argue, because I agree with you. It's like there's aspects of Trapped that I think is more engaging than Dune 2.
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's just dumb. It's just like it ends in dumb. Yeah. Whatever way you slice it, I think there are probably your ideas of it, my friends' ideas, how I feel about it doesn't matter. But by that, I think overall everyone's like that third act really just drops the movie into abysmal, like, this is really dumb.
Oh yeah, I'm watching an M. Night movie. Oh
yeah, you're like, oh wait, this is M. Night, but not the good M.
Not
Night.
allowed
like,
to.
you think you're getting good M. Night, and then you're like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how you would love to see the movie end. It's not that great of a movie. If anything, I would tell people, watch the first 2 acts and enjoy that. Just turn the movie off.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Caught.
You know
me. Like re-edit the movie.
You know me.
Just like he got caught. You know.
Yeah. If the movie's not good, I am not gonna stake my reputation on a recommendation of a movie like this. I don't care if it was. This is me in the Spectre episode. I don't care if the movie was good for a while before turning into garbage. I don't care. So I don't think this movie's worth anybody's time. I have my personal fixes. I M. Night, I'm there for you, buddy. Bring me on as an advisor, and I will help you not sabotage your next work. But he is just keen on
he is
making his movie.
Own worst enemy. He is his own worst enemy. Yes. That is what I've always said. I think he is always his worst enemy. He will do what he thinks is the best idea, and it's usually not the best idea. I think I part of me thinks the reason why, the more that we talk about it, especially after we like talk about Knock the Cabin in this film, and even thinking about his other previous works, I think what happened was that between doing Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, I would say like maybe The Village and maybe Signs, he was able to be like, well, I'm M. Night Shyamalan, I can do whatever I want and just tell other people off. But before that, he couldn't tell people other people off, so other people told him what to do. And that's where I think that's what happened. That's where I think things went wrong. So I think there were people that were like a little more like, maybe we don't do that because I'm a producer and I know movies more than you do. You're just this new director that has just come on the scene. And then I think after he did The Village, he was just like, well, I can do whatever I fucking want. And then even after that, then he was like, oh, well, I'm just going to pay my own movie money to make these movies. So then he could just do whatever he really wanted. But like, he doesn't have anybody to tell him no. Like,
he became the Tyler Perry of Philadelphia, and everybody lines up to jump into his movies.
He has nobody to tell him no.
Yeah.
And so he might start with a great idea, but then the way in which it ends or how it goes, he doesn't have anybody to probably say, maybe that's not a good idea. And this is why I don't think it's a good idea. And that's what I think about M. Night. I think he probably at one time had somebody who could steer him in the right direction. And
Again, you might as well
that's
be
why
talking
he
about George
got, that's why you got
Lucas.
signs.
You might as well
Well,
be talking
Lucas,
about
here's the
George
thing.
Lucas.
Here's the thing about Lucas. Lucas, at least, I think, admittedly, but got to the point where he realized he didn't want to direct. And the only reason the only reason he did the sequels or the prequels is because he wanted to do those movies. And he wanted to do them the way he wanted to do. But I think he would even admit that he's not the best. And and it shows when you listen to his autobiography, or not his autobiography, when you listen to his biography. They would even say he's like, yeah, he was known for not being the best director.
Yeah.
Like, he's a really good idea man and a really great producer and a really great person that like came up, like was really pushing the envelope as far as like fixing cinema and making things better for cinema. And part of the reason why we have great special effects that we do today, or visual effects, is because of Lucas. And he made the right decisions at the right time. But like, I think but I think at the end of the day, I think he would probably even agree. He's like, I'm not the best person to be directing movies. Which is a fair assessment. I think and he didn't even like the whole process. You know,
M. Night to come to the same conclusion and go, I come up with really good ideas and I can write, and then hand it off to somebody else to go, okay, I actually understand human beings, and I know you're a spurg, and I'm going to
he
take
should
over.
be M. Night. I think M. Night should be a story by kind of guy. I don't think he should be a screenplay by guy.
It should read story by, and then screenplay by him and another guy, and then directed by someone else, and he would be hailed as a genius. But instead, just like George Lucas, I got a little ego involvement, and so I need to also show that I'm a genius director. No. And how many movies are you going to do, M. Night, before you realize this? But I don't know.
Yeah.
There's always going to be ego with someone like this. So what are you going to do? Just like our friend Sam Mendes, but that's a story for another time. More inside jokes, McCurdy.
They're into you. They're after you, bro.
All right, so we covered 3 movies tonight. I could go on for another 6 hours. We could just redo everything and talk about all of them again, and I could.
And the funny thing is, you haven't seen that many movies this year. Like, no. I don't know how many people are going to watch this, but
these are the 3 movies I've seen. I have only seen these 3 movies. I haven't seen any other movies.
I will tell you. I will read off every movie that I've seen this year. Well, give me like 2 minutes. Let me pull up my A-listers.
No, you go ahead. I'm gonna pee. You go ahead.
I want to read it to you. You can't just leave me, bro. Are you just leaving because you got to pee? Simple ass. Let's see. Past year. So in the past year. Yeah, let's see how all the movies I saw this year, with not including American Fiction because it technically came out last year. I went and saw The Beekeeper, Argyle, Dune Part 2, Kung Fu Panda Part 2, or Kung Fu Panda 4, sorry. Love Lies Bleeding, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, Civil War, Challengers, The Fall Guy, Furiosa Mad Max Saga. I saw The TV Glow, If, The Watchers, which is another it's M. Night's daughter, believe it or not, but it feels like it should just be directed by M. Night. Inside Out 2, The Bike Riders, Kinds of Kindness, Daddy-O, Maxine, Fly Me to the Moon, Horizons, an American Saga, Chapter 1, Long Legs, Twisters, Deadpool and Wolverine, Despicable Me 4, Trap, and then recently I saw Kneecap and Dee Dee. So I've seen my fair share of movies. If you're not going to the theaters, shame on you. You should go and see new movies as they come out because it's a different experience than just watching them at home and pausing and stopping them. But I don't know. Anyway, no one else is watching any of this crap, so it's fine. It's fine.
What's fine?
Yeah, it's fine.
Anyway,
There's another movie I would say that I would be like, yeah, you should go see. I would say
I'd
go
leave it to you.
see.
McCurdy,
Go
I
see.
leave it to you.
Dude, I am curious. I'm just curious on your position on Dee, just because it does feel like I watch it and I can't not think of Dan's, but I can't also not think of like growing up as a kid and just because the movie takes place in 2008.
Okay.
So they kind of brush on the MySpace to Facebook thing that happened where everyone was like on MySpace and then Facebook became a thing. So everyone kind of just moved over to Facebook. But it feels like it's kind of like how Holdovers is, where it's like it's a movie where you remember it because you remember being a kid and you remember that time period in your life being that summer between school and the previous year and then moving into another school year. And then the other movie was Kneecap, which I really, really liked a lot.
Do it.
Kneecap to me is a lot like, I think I said, it's the combination of one of my all-time favorite movies, which is That Thing You Do, which is about a one-hit wonder band that was directed by Tom Hanks. It's a fictional band. And then SLC Punk, and also probably like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels also meets a little bit of Straight Outta Compton. Like take all four of those movies and kind of combine them together. But it's like super layered. So all the characters have their own plots going on. But on top of that, the entire cast of the movie, the main cast, are all this actual band. And so I'm not 100% sure that the story they're telling is true, or if it's like a crazy fictionalized version of their coming of age story. So it's almost autobiographical movie about themselves with them in the movie. And I kind of forgot that as I was watching the movie. I didn't even know that. So I checked out Kneecap, which is that was the movie I'm describing as Kneecap. So I would check that out.
All right.
What else?
Well, leave it to you. Give me a homework assignment. I'll watch.
I will.
Whatever.
I'll be like, go try to see these movies if you can.
And anybody still watching this farce, give us, tell us what movies that we should be covering this year, because it's already August. So, the list isn't going to be as long as it was last year.
Go see Twisters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm like, this list of 3 movies we talked about are like there's a lot of shit that we probably didn't even go see.
Okay,
that
great.
I could have told
Do you want to
see.
talk about Pairs
right now?
I don't know. It's just nobody's watching. Maybe 2.
No one's watching.
A couple of people are watching. Anybody still watching? McCurdy made a movie. And let's live stream it.
We will.
Okay.
We will live stream the movie at some point, but we'll premiere it, and then I'm gonna live stream it so people can get a chance to watch it for themselves and criticize it and give their opinions.
And
finally, I'll go, okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
And then other things will happen after that. But yeah, the only thing I might be working on next week is maybe recoloring a few sequences, because after I looked at it, I was like, oh, we probably should have watched it at one more time before we combined it all together, because there was a couple of parts where I was like, ooh, I wish I'd spent a little more time.
Well, I already did my bit
fixing this thing.
I did my bit.
You did a lot.
You now.
So you did a lot.
Yeah.
So.
I'm still waiting on my. You said you were going to send me a bunch of money. Are you still sending me that money?
So much money that I don't have.
Wait, what? No, you said you were sending a bunch of money. I'm still waiting on it. Is it coming?
No.
What?
What?
You lied to me? Anyway, okay, so
I did.
Yeah, we want to live stream Pairs.
I lied to you.
McCurdy's going to premiere it somewhere at some point. And then we're going to put it out on the channel for one night only. We'll do a one night only thing.
It's a one night only. We'll do a one night only on Ranked. It's going to premiere. It'll probably the one night only screening will be the week after it premieres. That's my plan, at least. So we're going to premiere it at a film festival in Indiana that it's going to premiere at, and then the night after or the week after it'll premiere, we'll have an online one night only screening so you can see it. And if you don't see it, too bad. It's going to go away. And then it might show up someplace else. We'll see.
Cool. All right. So,
That's the idea.
Of these 3 movies, I would ask you who we should toast to, but I think I would just say, I don't know, Pixar. Let's just toast to Pixar.
I don't have any more alcohol to drink right now. I am out. I'm literally out, Charlie. I'm out of alcohol. I'll take this little
fake
little
it. Bro,
a little speckle of alcohol.
You just fake it.
Let's see.
Right.
You fake it.
It's a Pixar.
Let's see.
It's a fucking Pixar.
I would just say, actually, I think it is Pete Docter. I think he's the director of. Let me check this real quick.
Pete Docter directed this one. Okay.
Yeah, I think Pete Docter directed it, and I could be wrong about that. But
okay.
Let's see. I would say it would be the genius of Pixar, and I would put a lot of the emphasis on the director and writers of this film.
Here's what I'll say to you, McCurdy.
I'm wrong.
You've seen a lot of movies this year. I have seen 3.
Yes.
I've seen Dune Part 2, Inside Out 2, and Trap. That's all I've seen this year. If you come back to me...
I don't think these are the best movies this year, though, too.
That's what I'm saying. Come back to me with anything that can beat Inside Out 2. Because if Inside Out 2 stayed at the top of the list for the rest of the year, I would be happy about it. So that's the challenge I give to you. We're not going to do 52. We're clearly not going to do 52 movies like we did last year. We did 1 a week.
Right.
We achieved that goal. In case y'all don't realize, we want to just I want to keep editing. You have a job to do, and I want to keep editing long form episodes and not putting as much time into these live streams, but we still want to do them because they're fun and we like talking about this stuff. So I'm going to do no prep for these. We just hit live and talk. That being the case, we're not going to do as many as last year, and I'd like to keep going into the next year. But as of 2024, give me a homework assignment. I'll go see whatever movie.
I would say
something
right
that
now,
could beat
right at this moment, as far as good movies that I've seen in the last year that we could talk about, I'll throw a couple at you. I would try to check out Maxine.
Oh my God, no!
I would try to check out.
I want one. Give me one.
No. I don't care.
What is our next episode?
Some of these.
What is our next episode?
Try to check out Maxine. Try to check out Long Legs. Try to check out Bike Raiders, Twisters, and maybe Deadpool. Deadpool and Wolverine was what it's called. But yeah, check out those 5 movies if you can. Any of those 3. Those are 5 movies you can check out. See 3 of them. I don't care.
Which one's going to beat Inside Out 2?
Another one would be Fly Me to the Moon.
Which one is better than Inside Out 2?
The movie that I think is better than Inside Out 2 probably will go to something like either Bike Riders. I really liked Kneecap, or Dee Dee. Those are like 3 movies that I think might be better than Inside Out 2.
All right.
Maybe. I don't know about your standards, but I was like, one's a kid's movie, one's a movie for adults. Like, that's kind of where I'm going. Like, I don't know. They're talking about different things, but there's a point in. I will say this: there's a point in Kneecap where I go, this is a movie that looks like it's just a fun like teenage romp movie, and then it goes to like more of an adult like movie where I was like, oh fuck, I like this movie a lot more than I thought I did. I thought I was going to like it.
Okay. All right.
So
I have a homework
those are
assignment.
a couple movies you can check out. Go check out any of those movies. It's a lot of movies you can go see.
To Pixar?
Kelsey Mann is the director on this one,
Big
so
time.
I would give it to Kelsey Mann.
Okay.
She fucking came up with this plot. I think good job.
Yeah.
Good job, Kelsey Mann. You did it. You did it.
Kelsey. Okay. All right. Good job. Inside Out 2. I'm going to turn off the stream.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, whatever. Get fucked, McCurdy.